got some eager pruning students here. So this is always a fun one for me. So how many people are here, husband and wife? All right, so do we both prune or does one or the other prune? Oh, all right. So there's
don't trust their husbands.
I was going to say, there's one rule in here where we're not going to hate on the spouse when it comes to the pruning. We're both going to learn equally today, right? It's like, put that chainsaw down and get away from my tree. That's usually what I hear. All right. So we'll go through kind of hot and heavy today. There's a lot of stuff we can talk pruning. We'll do questions at the end. You could ask me about pruning anything. I'm sure you guys came to class today with like, what do I do with this and what do I do with that? Doesn't matter if it's summer, spring, fall, winter. We'll get you set up with how to do it. We're kind of at the cusp of winter here, so I want to start by saying I'm not trying to send any of you home today to go start pruning everything. We're still a little bit warm. If it was my opinion, we always try to do this class early November-ish to kind of get you going for the winter time. So I mean, you're probably still a couple weeks out before we get a good hard frost. Maybe it'll be a month out, I hope, but eventually we'll get one. At that point, we're dormant. Sap's not flowing, and we can go ahead and have at quite a bit of pruning that we'll talk about today. So this class is not about probably going home today or tomorrow, but coming up in the next few weeks over the winter. I do another seminar mid-January that does a little bit of this plus some more, and then we always have our big, huge kind of pruning for harvest class. It's a totally different situation when we start to talk about fruit trees, berries, blueberry, raspberry, pear, all the above. That'll be a very specific class. Again, I don't care, you can ask me after class whatever you like, I'll answer you. You don't have to wait till next year, but that class really deals with that. And a lot of folks with fruit trees and things, I think, need some help. That's a little tougher, more exact situation on how to manage our orchards and things, okay? So this will be kind of the first. We always do it's kind of a three-part series around here. We've got this time of year, we do January, then I always have one in June. And June will be our summer class where we're going to talk a lot about things that we will deal with in the summertime as well, okay? So we're going to start with just a couple of basic things on pruning. You know, no matter what time of year, we're going to take the time to prune. We're going to take the time to prune right. You know, I got my basic little hand pruner. I always show you, I just sharpened it before class, but if you don't have one of our fabulous sharpeners, you got to get one of these today. This is the best tool on the property. So I'm sharp and ready to go. And I'm just going to kind of show you, this is a twig dogwood. It doesn't really matter what it is. It could be a rose, it could be a rhodie, it could be whatever we want it to be. You can picture the leaves or not the leaves. But when we make a pruning cut, I want to look where my buds are. You can see this is twig dogwood. I've got opposite buds, little pairs of buds up and down the wood. So if I'm going to prune this, I'm not going to try to do that and leave myself a stub. I'm not going to try to prune it right at the bud because that'll never grow, right? I'm going to try to get down to above a pair of buds, leave myself a half an inch or an inch, and typically try to cut at an angle if I can. Is it the end of the world if I go flat? Probably not. But if I'm sitting there in the ground during our fine wet winter, water settles on there, I'm taking a chance of getting a little bit of rot or black or discoloration. If you're OCD like me, you like your plants tidy, you know, when you're going to prune. So if you're going to take the time to do it, try to get an angle cut. It's very important with the roses, some other plants in particular, but as a general rule, it's probably not the end of the world if you do this. Now that's probably why on a plant like this, I'm not going to grab my chainsaw and cut a twig dogwood off or a rhodie or whatever it is, because I'm not going to get anywhere close to where I want to prune. I'm going to look out and see dead buds and wood all over the place if I get the chainsaw out. So lopper, hand pruner, a typical thing will get me a proper cut at that proper level, all right? Now, if we talk about types of pruning, this is just what I just did. First we have, well, let's do the easy ones first. I brought a pansy in, my favorite winter flower. So this is the only thing that really blooms here in the winter and doesn't care how cold we get. If you have pansies, you know they look like ice cubes in January, and then they thaw, and it's like, oh wow, still blooming again, so they don't care. But this is the one plant in the winter that I'm going to pinch. So as I deadhead this, I'm going to grab my little snips, or frankly my fingernails work quite nicely, and I just want to simply pinch them back or deadhead the flowers. That's going to keep me buds coming. We were doing this in June. It would be all important. I would want to pinch everything, my perennials, my annuals, to keep things in color. Coming out of winter, I can also pinch foliage back. Sometimes pansies get a little leggy, a little open in the winter. I can pinch those back, relocate them into the garden, and I'm going to have a nicer looking plant by pinching them back, okay?
I think your camera turned off.
No, it's going. Okay, it's going. This screen just dies out. Yeah, it's a little battery. So pinching's the first one. Oh, hey, we got a stink bug here. Nice work. I brought a stink bug from home. We've got shearing, which again, chainsaw on the stick is one version. I have, you know, regular hedge clippers. I brought some stuff out of my garage to show. But I've got regular hedge clippers. If I look at some plants, a real common one's boxwood, you know, Japanese holly. I've got an arborvitae, the little green fence hedge. Plants like that are the opposite of my twig dogwood. If I look at a boxwood or a holly here, I have so many buds up and down the stem. I'm not going to spend an hour walking around and cutting little tip pieces here and there. I certainly could if I wanted. That's the candidate. I'm going to grab my hedge clippers, turn it into an ice cube, triangle, oval, circle, whatever your thing is. I don't usually like the topiary, but you can do whatever you like. It's your boxwood. So some plants like that, shearing is probably going to save you some time, and I'm not as concerned about how close I get to the bud because I have so many on the stem. It's going to be healthy. It's going to break bud, fill back in. I've got the exact look I want going forward. Okay. The two major things we're going to do today are thinning and heading back. So if I pull my dogwood branch out here, he's getting pretty pruned back here. We still got some wood left. And this was long. If I simply take a stem and cut it back to above a bud, I am heading that stem back, reducing height, spread, and I'm telling you, okay, you're getting too big. Next year, I get 2 buds break, and I'm a little shorter, I'm a little more compact, a little tidier, right? So if I'm heading back, I'm trying to control size. Now, I'll be honest, yes, I head back some things in my yard. It's not that I don't ever do it, but I don't do as much of that as you probably think. I really like thinning. You know, I want plants to grow like they're supposed to. I look at a plant that's too congested. I want air circulation. I want sunshine. I want less disease. I want a happier plant long term. So if I thin it out, I've got the sun penetration. I've got air flowing through there, especially during the growing season, and I've got much happier plants. I'm going to work on that at the end of class because that's going to take me a while. But you can see that coral bark maple. I chose that specifically because A, you can see the wood pretty easily, and B, that thing's a mess. I told my crew, do not touch that this summer because I'm going to do it in the class this fall. So we're going to work on that, and you'll see the difference. If I'm not interested in heading back this, okay, I'm looking in the middle and saying, how can I get this thing open back up so I've got the structure I want and a nice looking tree long term, okay? Now, one thing I would say with heading back is, I'm not talking about leaders. Now, if you're having to take a tree and chop the top out of it every year, again, it's your yard, I'm not going to hate on you, but that's really not what this class is about. A lot of plants that have leaders, that's why they do. I want a nice symmetrical tree, conifers, big shade trees. A lot of plants have an apical dominant leader that I want to leave to get my nice tidy tree down the road. Other plants, fruit trees, Japanese maples, on and on, don't have a leader. So it really doesn't matter if I do need to keep them down a little bit. To me, it's not going to ruin the shape as versus I walk out and take the top out of my Douglas fir. It's going to look like a mess for all eternity. You might as well get it out of there and plant something smaller if it's too big. Is that making sense? Okay. So those 3 types, use the right tool for the right job. You know, and I brought up an assortment of tools today. This is always a great class to do a little pre-Christmas shopping. Santa always likes pruners in his stocking, right? I'm always like those in my stocking. But pruners are on special for the class today, 20%. You know, I'll show you some if you like. We can talk plants. It's up to you. I mean, I'll show you maybe just a couple. The sharpener is a must. Okay. If you don't have, anyone have this already? Everyone that's been to the classes always buys one of these. This is a really good sharpener. I mean, I keep this in the garage. I can pull out my lopper, my hand pruner, whatever it is. It's like, oh, quick, let's get a little sharp job on you. I run it through there, done. My wife stole the first one because if I look at it, turn it over, it actually works for scissors and knives and some other things as well. I like it because for me, I've got a screw cap, I got a brush to clean, I keep a little oil in there. So if I'm out in the wet, you know, I want to keep it oiled and lubricated. It's an easy way to put a little 3-in-1 oil or mineral oil in there. Keep the pruners happy as well. So that's a great little tool for sharpening. We've always got hand pruners. Now, I have those, other people don't. You know, I have huge hands, that's fine. You might have small hands. I'm left-handed, I got it strong, I got a weak, whatever. There's pruners for everybody. My mother likes the rolled handle. If you see that one, it takes all the tension off the wrist. You know, I've got a handle here that actually swivels as I cut. So instead of having to do this, it actually rolls your wrist and you'll take a lot of pressure off if you've got carpal tunnel issues or anything with the wrist going, okay? But we got big. I just bought a pair of these. I found these at the show. Now, there's a big pruner. I've had some people say, oh, they can get that with 2 hands. It's like a little mini lopper. So that's the big size, and then we go all the way down to smaller. You need to get what's comfortable for you. I'd be happy you go in. We'll pull them out of the package, play with them, try a couple branches, see how they feel. Then we get you the right thing for the right person. Now, pruners are always like anything in life to me. You get what you pay for. I've still got my OG Felco number 2s from like 1988 in the garage. There's no red left on the handle. They still work perfectly. I'll never get rid of them. They're kind of nostalgic. But there's your $100 pruners. You know, not a lot of gardeners are like, yeah, send me up for that for $100 bucks. Like, ooh, you know, if you don't leave them in the yard waste. They do have red handles, so you can usually find them, because I've done that before. But we can always save a little bit. You know, you buy those and you take care of them, you're going to have a pair of Felcos for life. You know, the Rolex, the Timex, whatever you want to compare it to. There's nothing wrong these days. We get Zenporn in. Looks just like a Felco. It's a knockoff. I'm surprised lawyer hasn't called the other at this point. But there's 40 bucks. You know, and I have pairs of these at home. I have pairs of these at work, and most of our staff has pairs of both. So you can use whichever. Most gardeners, I think, are out tending their yard. You're here because you care. You're going to use them, but you're probably not going to use them as much as I do, or Margot does, or some other people around here. You know, we prune 2,000 roses in January, 1,500 fruit trees in February. I mean, we go right through the year. We do a lot around here, and at my house I do as well. So they'll last. You take care of them. Just don't put them in the yard waste. There's the advice for the day, right? So we've got hand pruners, sharpeners, loppers. You know, we got a few different sizes. This is the #1 most popular sold tool across the entire United States, and not for homeowners, for commercial places, great vineyards, berry producers, fruit tree orchards. This is the creme de la creme for loppers. This is made by Zenport, but aluminum, very light. You know, you're like $100, 60 bucks for these. They're not super cheap, but again, they will last you a lifetime, and they're super useful. So loppers, sometimes my issue with loppers is, you know, I got a big plant and I got to get wide out to get in there, and how do I get the right angle to use a lopper, okay? So they're useful tools. I still have them. I brought mine out of the garage. I use them at my house on occasion, but I tend to use this. I'll bring mine out because it's already open. I tend to use this little saw more than anything. So this is what we call pocket saw. You get a new one every 3 years or so, okay? So that's a very small little saw. It's got an easy blade. They're sharp. Be careful with your fingers. But this, to me, is a surgical tool. I could look at any plant up here, especially older things, and where I have a tough time getting a lopper in to get a proper cut and not leave a stub, the right angle, all the above, I can take this and get in there and make a perfect cut, get that entire branch thinned out, and I've got a much happier tree. Is that making sense? So again, this and the sharpener, if you don't have, I think would do you a world of good. Just be careful, they're sharp. But that's a great little tool to throw in a little pocket thing here, clip it on the belt, and it goes out with the pruners when I'm out working in the yard. So great little saw. If I want bigger, I have one of these as well. If I'm going to a little bigger limb, I just get a little larger version. You know, and that one stays in the garage except when needed. You know, it's like an emergency, break glass, you know, bring out the big one, right? Loppers, the last one probably to mention, pole pruner. So I brought mine in. This is my dinosaur out of the garage. He's going on about year 9 now. Okay, and that's one example of one we have for sale. Pole pruner is going to be expensive. You know, if you want to get a good pole pruner, you're looking at a couple $100. You know, that's what I paid for my red one there. But it's going to last me a lifetime. You know, I'm not looking for cheap rope breaks. I want extended. I want a thick pole. I want a good prune, and I can screw my saw on there and do some sawing as well. So if you're not interested in paying the arborist, you know, $8,525 an hour to come do something for you, you get comfortable with pruning and thinning a little bit in the wintertime, you could get a good pole pruner. That'll get up 15, 16 feet in the air. I can do what I need to do on my own, take care of it, and I save a little bill with the arborist, okay? So a good pole pruner might be the way to go too. Now, if we talk, you know, kind of the who, when, why, how, all those things. So why do I prune? You know, there's got to be a purpose to me. You know, this isn't, you know, 1975 with my dad. Sorry, Dad, if he watches this. But, you know, where it's, oh my God, it's December or January, whatever month, we have to go prune everything in the yard. You know, that's not what I'm trying to send you home with today. Have a purpose. Why do I need to prune that? Is it blocking the view? Is my neighbor's lawyer threatening to sue because she can't see the water anymore? Is it onto my door? Does it have disease? Do I simply want more fruit, more berries, more bloom, whatever it is? All those are great reasons to prune, but it doesn't mean that, oh, it's dormant season, let's go shave everything into little shrubs because it's the time of year to do it. That's not what this is about. It's probably, again, choosing your battles and having a purpose to it, okay? So increasing fruit, flowering will be number one on my list. I want to plant because I want to enjoy the bloom or I want to eat it. You know, those are two great reasons to grow plants. So let's prune to maximize both of those benefits, okay? Obviously the shape and the structure. You know, that's a big thing here in the winter as things go dormant. I can see the branching, I can see the crown, I can see all that business, and I can dive in and do a little bit of pruning to rejuvenate maybe an older shrub or tree that's in need of some thinning and some heading back, okay? So shape and structure is a big one. Crossing limbs, you know, dead limbs, interior growth. Doesn't mean you have a disease or that plant needs to go away, but we need to get that stuff cleaned out of there, okay? As I mentioned already, who likes to spray? Anybody like to spray here? I'm gonna leave my hands down. If we can decrease disease, increase sun, and get better earth circulation, you're not gonna have the diseases that you do. If you put things in the wrong place and you keep them wet and they're too much shade, they're twiggy and crowded, you're asking for powdery mildew, you're asking for black spot on the rose. Whatever the plant is, that's gonna make you a propensity to have you get that a lot easier. So again, thinning it out, opening up is huge. But again, no one says you have to prune everything in your yard. I'm hoping you kind of, the gears turn today and you're like, okay, I could go get this done this month and I could wait till January and do these, and yes, I would want to do that, all the above. So you can kind of get a little battle plan as we go through the winter time here, okay? So knowing your plants in the landscape, I think, is a big part of this, and we're not going to try to turn you into 100% botanist today, but always ask if you don't know. A huge part of plant is, you know, two big things I want to talk about with this. So we talk about buds. Now I think I destroyed my twig dogwood, so I can't bring it up anymore, but we looked at that twig dogwood branch, right? I had pairs of buds in a perfect pattern down the stems. That's what we call opposite bud plants. If I have one shoot comes up and I head that back to above two buds, what's going to happen next year? Two little growth comes up and I've got a nice, healthy, thicker, bushier specimen, right? It's going to increase the shape. You know, I'm going to go from this long, leggy stem to a thicker, bushier plant. Again, depending on what taste you have. That's an easy example of that is hydrangea. I look at a hydrangea, okay? What do I always have on hydrangea? Again, opposite pairs of buds down the stem. I go all the way down to the wood on an old hydrangea, I'm going to find the same exact structure through there, okay? We have other plants that are alternate bud, okay? So if we look, I see if I can find all my samples I borrowed this morning from my house. Well, here, we'll just look. Witch hazel would be an example. Here's a little piece of my witch hazel I borrowed. Sorry, buddy. But you can see the same thing. What do I have? Alternate branches, right? Up and down the stem. I'm not doing pairs like the hydrangea we just looked at. So I'm going to be a little bit more careful where I choose to prune this. If I'm standing here and I'm the trunk and I have an alternate bud tree growing out of here, what do I want to do? I want it to go that way. Do I want it to go that way, right? I want to pick my direction. So if I prune this to there and head that back, now I'm going that way. If I go here, now I'm going the other direction. So if you look at those plants, you know, by the door, by the parking pad, wherever it is, you're like, well, I don't really want to get rid of this, but I need to control it somewhat. I can very easily direct the pruning and the growth a certain way by picking what bud I'm pruning it to, okay? I mean, maybe again, a rose is a really easy example. Who has roses in here? We got a few. So if I look at my rose, I've got all my canes, I've got an open center, but I've got opposite buds all up and down those canes. If I prune or deadhead my rows, why would I ever cut to one on the inside? Because now I'm just growing right back across my middle. I don't have the sun, I don't have the disease, I don't have the air circulation, I'm gonna have the disease, right? Okay? So opposite alternate buds. The biggest thing is gonna be old wood versus new wood blooms. Does everyone kind of know when I say that? So we look at the vast majority of the plants we grow around here. Some things I can do whatever I want to over the winter to spring because it grows up, I get healthy leaves, and it blooms immediately. It's a new growth bloomer. We look at something like spirea, right there, okay? Turning pretty color. I'm not gonna run home and prune mine today. I got 2 or 3 different spireas in my yard, but sometime over December, January, February, before I get to spring, I'm gonna take my spirea that's 4 foot tall, and you would laugh as you come in my house, and I've got a little clump of twigs about 8 inches out of the ground. And then next year, here comes healthy leaves, here comes a flower, I don't skip a beat, okay? If I look at something like, everybody's got a rhododendron, right? We got any rhodie haters in here? Hopefully not. Rhodies are good plants. So I borrowed this out of one of my rhodies this morning. Rhododendron is the opposite of that, okay? What have I done all summer? I've spent the entire summer setting my new growth out after it bloomed last April. I've set my flower bud that's gonna sit there and tell me spring is coming here for the next 3 months, and then that's gonna open in the spring. When it's done blooming, then I can prune it. Okay, if I walk out right now and prune my rhodie, is it gonna kill it? Maybe not. You're taking a chance. Sometimes if we get a cold winter, but you just cut off all your flower buds. You know, to me, it's not maybe the rhodie as the best example, but all of us have magnolias, dogwood trees, flowering cherry, flowering plum, crabapple, we go on and on, lilacs. All those plants already have their flower buds sitting there that you will get to enjoy as they bloom late winter, spring to early summer next year. If I go out in the winter and I head back my cherry, are you going to kill it? No, but you just cut off probably 2/3 or 3/4 of your blossoms, okay? We'll do a quick question, we're going to do them at the end.
Yeah.
Okay.
One of my rhodies bloomed.
Okay.
Got like 4 or 5 blooms came
A little
out.
bit in the fall, yeah.
Should I cut them off? Should I leave them? What
No,
should
I would leave. I wouldn't. Okay, let's do this before we get too much farther. So anything evergreen, okay, that I keep my leaves from now and I'm not turning color and I have it through the winter, I'm not interested in pruning anything evergreen, period. Never ever in the fall, never in the winter. All that stuff waits till after frost next April, okay? So boxwood, azalea, camellia, rhodie, on and on and on. Anything that's broadleaf and evergreen, we do not touch this late in the season. You've got to get that. That's a June pruning class for me. We prune in June, we let it regrow, we get our flower bud, we're on to next year. So that's a next April, May, June kind of thing. Not a late summer, not a fall, not a winter, okay? So watch for this. So things that, if we kind of understand the old wood, new wood bloom a little bit and the bud structure. So now you get into my 3 big rules. You know, disease and winter damage. I never know what the heck it's going to do around here. If you've got a crystal ball, I'll borrow it, because you can tell me when's the frost coming. Are we getting 7 degrees like we did last December? You know, who knows what the winter brings. I always say this, and I'll knock on real wood. It's going to be a nice mild winter, right? That's what everyone says. So I never know. But again, when I prune, what's the definition of pruning? I want to cut something so that it regrows and reestablishes and it gets a little bushier and nicer from it, right? So I'm not interested in doing the evergreen stuff this time of year. It's going to get frost damage. You know, I always play scientist at my house, so I went out intentionally, and we'll see what happens here this winter, and I've got some nice big boxwood kind of flanking my entrance gates to the backyard. So I went out later than I ever have Labor Day, and I said, let's see what happens this year. And I cut them back, not crazy, just shaped them a little bit, so I got my columns. I've got beautiful light green, brand new foliage out right now, and I'm gonna see what happens here in a month, because we get a hard frost, all that's gonna turn brown. I'm not gonna kill my plant, but now I gotta go prune it again. Is that making sense? So wait a little bit on some of that, and we'll see. I'll report back in January if my boxwood defoliated or not. We'll see what happens. So that's one, is watching for damage. If I had a windstorm, you know, a breakage, snow damage, I don't know how bad you guys are, but I usually run around in the snowstorms and brush the snow off a lot of my conifers so I don't break any branches here and there. That's probably not so good to say, but I do that a lot. You know, watch damage for broken stuff, especially big limbs. if I had a tree that cracked out, we don't need to wait until spring. If I've got a broken limb, a damage, get it out of there. Cut it out, be done with it. Sometimes if we picture my arm here, right? I've snapped off in a windstorm. The Douglas fir, the magnolia, I don't care what kind of plant it is, but it's broken. It's cracked and it's severed. I need to get that out of there. Cutting it off and leaving a stub is going to do me absolutely nothing except leave an eyesore. So I got to get back to the trunk. But always do this. If you walk out and start sawing down, what's going to happen? Limb's going to crack, it's going to break, the weight's going to peel all my skin, my bark. If I was a plant, I got skin. You don't want to damage that thing like that. So always cut up, make a notch, sever it, then I can go back and get a perfect little cut when all the weight's off there, okay? I'm not going into the tissue, I'm not leaving a stub, I'm going right to that collar so that it heals properly. Won't even know the difference as it heals up and matures, okay? So watch for damage. Prune after bloom is the #1 rule for me. You know, we've talked about a lot of different plants off and on here already, but this is the rhodie, the azalea, anything you could ever imagine. If I'm going to prune something, after bloom is always the safest way to go. Okay, if I prune earlier, cut off my flower buds. Some things, like I mentioned, spirea, doesn't matter, but when it blooms, what do? Prune it after bloom, and guess what it does? It blooms again. You know, why not have 2 blooms that way? Rhododendron, azalea, camellia, all the stuff that we see around here, you're never going to lose with that prune after bloom method, okay? The 1/3 rule. Be honest, who's broken the 1/3 rule? I'll raise both my hands because I have many times. So that's another safe rule. I mean, some plants, you know, we can get away with it, other things you can't. But, you know, rhodie's probably one sometimes I've gotten away with, I'll be honest. I've taken a couple old rhododendrons back way more than 1/3, so let's see what happens, and oh yeah, here they come. So if I look at height or spread, I'm always going to be safe to take 1/3 of either in a season. So if you bought a house, you inherited we call them the garage barriers. You know, we get these old rhodies that existed 50 years ago that told you they were going to get 6 feet by 6 feet. Now they've been in the ground and they're about 15 feet by 20 across, and they buried my garage. I can't even get in the damn door anymore. Okay, we could probably get away with a little more than that, or again, we can go 1/3. Let it grow up. Next year, another chunk, and we can gradually win. We don't have to just say, get it out of here, let's get a new one in, although sometimes that might be a better choice too. But we can win if we stick to that 3rd rule, okay? Now the last thing I'll say on that is right plant in the right spot. If you're having to walk out every year and you're having to butcher something into a little twiggy mess because you had to have it next to the front door, it might not be the right plant for the right spot. This is shade versus sun. This is size, this is all the above. So be really careful. It drives me crazy. A lot of nurseries will sell things, you know, oh, it grows 3 to 4 feet tall. Well, that's 10 years. What is it? I'm not planning on chopping my yard down every 10 years and starting over again. So what is it in light? What's a garden size? Not this 10-year junk. So if we kind of watch that, we got an idea. Okay, maybe I need to move that when I planted it originally a little farther away from the sidewalk, or give it some room to mature, or keep it away from the house. Whatever it is will eliminate some work down the road for you as well. Because I love to prune. It's kind of fun if you're OCD and you like to find your zen, you know, whatever you want to say. It's fun to prune, but I don't need to do it every day. You know, we keep the pruning down to a minimum. Usually still have happy plants. All right. So let's look at some things we're going to prune today. Now you can look through this list. I brought some things in from my house, and we're going to open it up for some questions after I show you a few branches here, because I'm going to go through a few things fast and furious. Before we do that, I'm just going to skip real quick to that section 5, because I always forget to look at that. So pruning, protecting your specimens. Now I would never tell anybody to go home in the winter, the spring, the summer, whatever it is, and spray your whole yard. Again, I don't like to spray. I don't think anybody will sign up. Oh, it's so fun to go spray everything. No, it's not. I don't think anybody likes to spray. But what you need to do is right now, at the end of the year, look back. What did I have problems with in 2024? What had mildew? What died back? Look back at your garden and think what had issues. Those are the things I'm going to try to focus on protecting for the next season. So rose is always an easy, I keep picking on roses. I love roses, so I'm not picking on them. But rose is always an easy candidate. You know, when we have issues with roses, everybody's going to end up with black spots and mildew, whatever it is, at some point. This is the time of year we can press the reset button. You know, we get to Veterans Day is 1 week away. That's my day in the fall. We go hip high on roses. Hip high in the fall. We get to President's Weekend in February, now we go knee-high. So we go hip-high fall, knee-high spring. At springtime especially, which we'll talk about in January, we strip everything off that plant. You're gonna look at that rose and your eye is gonna tell you, oh, but it has beautiful new green leaves, there's nothing wrong with it, why am I cutting this off? Because you can't see the mildew, the black spot, all the spores that have blown in are gonna absolutely take off as soon as it starts growing again. So we wanna strip it and cut it back. There should be nothing left on that rose starting off the season. The fall, not as worried maybe about doing all that, but again, if I had disease issues, I'm gonna clean it up as it falls and throw it away. I'm not gonna leave it as mulch, and I'm probably gonna get myself a good dormant spray to make sure I'm protected and we start the next year clean, okay?
Some of my roses are still blooming though.
Exactly, and again, this isn't for everybody. Mine are still blooming too, and I'm not gonna probably run out in a week and say you're done. We've got a pretty nice weather here in the fall, but once we get a hard frost, I think you're okay to kind of start thinking about tidying them up. So the two things we like to use in the winter, and frankly you can use these in the growing season, are those two. And we got them on sale for the classes here over the winter. So this is 20% off as well. Liquid Cop is a superior copper spray. We can't call this organic, doesn't contain carbon, but copper's considered a natural fungicide. The only place I would worry about using copper is right on the water. If you're on the water, we got to go to plan B. But the only thing this really affects would be invertebrates. You know, fresh water, stream, lake, sound, the rest of it. It's not going to hurt getting into the soil. It's not going to hurt getting on the majority of plants around here. We're not going to spray our kid. We're not going to spray our pets. But we're going to get it on our plants. And it does a fabulous job of disease preventing. This is a product, if I put this on my coral bark here in the wintertime, we were talking about copper on maples before, and I wanted to protect that thing because all the disease is blowing in the wind and the rain. If I prune, I've got an open cut where something else can get into. So if I prune, then I maybe spray with a little bit of that copper. I've got a shield that prevents things from getting on my plant for usually about 30 days. So if I get this on over the winter, whether it's my fruit tree, my maple, things that again I might have issues with, that's a great way to kind of get ahead for the next season. All right? So get that on sale as well. We'll probably do the same thing in January. So if you're kind of more of a, I'm not interested yet, I'm kind of the middle end of winter before I get my dormant spray down. We'll have one on sale when I do the seminars in January as well, okay? So we're gonna do that coral bark last, but I'm gonna bring up a couple plants here just to kind of show you some examples. Now, we have grasses. Who's got ornamental grasses? Okay? So we got all kinds of choices for grasses, but when it comes down to it, I really have two grasses. I have a perennial type grass. It's going to seed out, turn pretty colors. It'll be like Vanna White. Turn beautiful colors in the fall. No, I'm just kidding. So it's going to go dormant at some point, right? Now, I have grasses all over my yard. I love grasses. I think they're motion. They're interesting with frost. There's all kinds of good attributes of ornamental grasses. So I'm not running out here in the next 2 weeks and cutting all my grasses off of the ground. I do some because I'm OCD again, but I've got others. I just leave the structure. I want to hear the sound. I want to see the motion. So I'm not doing it, but I have to do this before it grows next year. So if you have any kind of perennial grass, I don't care if you walk out here in a week, 2 weeks, a month, 2 months, but get it done before the 1st of March. So cut it off. We're going to walk along. Sometimes a sawzall works really well for the big thick ones. But I'm going to chop that off about 2-3 inches above the crown, throw it in the yard waste. I've got a brand new plant. Starts right over and off we go for the next season. Now if I have evergreen grass, which will not go dormant, oh I grabbed it like hair if I had some, right? So if I have evergreen grass like this is a Carex, so I use these in pots. I got these in my yard. There's lots of other cool evergreens, but this is looking tired. This is not the time of year to do evergreen grass, just like our shrubs. I'm going to walk away. I'm going to write myself a note in the gardening calendar. I'm going to go out there the 1st of April in the spring, and now I'm going to cut the whole thing off, feed it, and here it comes again with a brand new plant. Doing this to an evergreen grass with brown tips is going to solve 0 of your problems. I'll warn you right now. You look at tips, oh, it's brown. I'll just take that off and this. Now you got another brown, another brown, another brown. It's just never going to end. So if it really is time to rejuvenate or start it over again, we would prune in April and let that start over, okay, for grass. So grass I want to mark down. Heather, and lavender are probably the most two misunderstood plants in the landscape. Who's got heather or lavender? Okay. Who hates heather? Because usually there's a bunch of you, I hate heather. I can't stand that thing anymore. It's because it's not pruned. That's why you probably don't like it. So let's do heather first. Now, I've got two kinds of heather going here, right? We have our Irish side and we have our Scottish side. We can choose your battle, right? I'm a camera clanner, so I'm going Scottish. So Kalunas and Ericas. Now Kalunas I buy because that's not unhealthy. I want foliage color in the winter. I want orange, yellow, red, greens. I want a beautiful foliage, not flower, but foliage. These bloom in the summer. They just finished. Now I get to enjoy the foliage here in the wintertime. So I could deadhead this. You can see on this, I've saved it intentionally. Can you see where my flowers were? Here, month, 2 months ago. So again, I'm OCD, so I'm probably walking out and doing a little bit of that in my yard. But it doesn't hurt if I wait till spring, nip this back a little bit. Now I've got a nicer, thicker, bushier, healthier plant. If I don't prune that, what's gonna happen? It's gonna get leggy, open, sprawl out, and I'm gonna have a whole lot of bare wood, okay? It's even worse on our Irish friends here. These are the ones I usually hear from a lot of customers. I hate heather. I don't want that crap in my yard anymore. I got rid of it. It looked like a donut. You know, I had a big frosting of green foliage around with a bunch of bloom, and the whole center of it's just dead wood. Well, it's because, again, we didn't prune it. If I take 2 seconds, this is a hedge clipper thing, I'm not gonna spend an hour going, okay, one and one and one. I'm gonna get my hedge clippers out, go low, and I'm gonna cut that off below the flowers, okay, coming out of the winter time. Now I'm gonna have a big, thick, bushy pincushion, healthy leaves, and maximum flowers for the next season, all right? So just a little bit of prune after bloom again is the perfect way to go on the heather. I brought one little lavender in here for the same reason. When I got married, my wife, she's learned lots of gardening now, but she didn't when we got married years ago. She said, I want lavender in the wedding. It was like, okay, here's lesson number 1. Yeah, I'll get you some lavender, honey. We'll use it in the wedding and plant it out in the yard. A year went by and she's like, really don't like that lavender. I don't really want to have it in here anymore, because what happens? That woody gets leggy, woody, upright. I drive by a house down here every year. She's probably got 3 feet of lavender wood and a little frosting on the top, you know. Hey, if it's her thing, it's her yard. I'm not gonna knock on the door and say, will you please cut that back? It's her yard. But, you know, if I want Squim, or we say Sequim, right, because we're locals. If I want Squim Lavender Festival, you know, or what I see in magazines, I want big, thick, low, bushy lavenders with maximum flower. That is pruning. It is all pruning and nothing else. It's not the variety, it's not the type, it's all about pruning. If I have this plant in my yard right now, okay, I'm gonna walk away, but I'm gonna be walking out in March, and I'm gonna be cutting this thing in half. I'm not gonna let it get bare wood for 3 years and then try to go back to where I wanted it in the first place. It's every year a quick little shearing, then it blooms, I shear it again. Blooms, I shear it again. Okay, so not, again, easy to do with the hedge clipper style, but you will have much nicer, denser lavender plants that will not rot out. Yes?
Well, it's nice if you've got a new lavender.
Yes.
Now, got old lavender.
Yeah. So if you've got old, there's gonna be 2 choices with that. Now, either, like she does, probably, oh, I'll just live with it. It's so tall and open. If it was me, this is not a fall, not a winter thing, but I would probably be walking out in your yard and saying, I don't want that anymore, so let's give it one last try. And I'd walk out in April and I would literally scalp the trunk, the wood, all of it down to about 6 inches. Okay, and then you're gonna cross your fingers, cross your toes, and go, please come back nicely. And a lot of times they will, sometimes they won't. And you'd be okay with that, because it's like, now I know how to prune it next time. That lavender goes to the compost heap in the sky, I can get a new one, and now I can keep it looking proper. Okay, but I would always try to rejuvenate it once, because plants are pretty resilient creatures. I think you'll have it come back typically, okay? Hers, maybe not so much, but that's a different story. Okay, so lavender, grasses. Now I mentioned the spirea earlier, because this is an example of a plant that blooms on new growth. I mean, this could be potentilla, spirea. There's plenty of plants that send up growth in the spring and then bloom immediately, right? We have lots of options for that. But as an example here in the fall, you know, I'm enjoying fall colors, so I'm not going to prune this right now. But as I said, in my yard, I could leave height if I want it. I can go low if I want. You do whatever you want to spirea. If you have this plant, I think it's a great shrub, foliage, color, bloom, all the above. But I can prune to my height, essentially. If I want a bigger plant, don't prune it as hard. If you're like me and I want a nice, tight, compact one in my rockery area, I'm gonna prune this pretty hard this winter. So this could be in a month, it could be in 2 months, as long as you get this done before it breaks bud. So usually for me, I'm out around the holidays, the early February, you know, where I'll get a lot of those new wood plants cut back, and then off we go for another season, okay? Now, if we looked at the twig dogwood, I try to get things with twig color because you can see them, right? It's a little easier to see than just more green. So there's a yellow twig dogwood. This is a plant I have at my house. Mine is huge, like probably 8 feet, 10 feet tall, and probably wider than that as it's matured. But that's what I wanted. I wanted a place for the birds to hang out. I got red twig, orange twig, yellow twig, all congested together like a little bird's nest. That's where all my little chickadees and all my little birdie friends hang out. They feed and they go hide in there from the bigger birds. So do I prune mine? Absolutely. It got a hard prune this year because it was getting out of control. But I've got options with this. We talked about heading back. We talked about thinning. This could be a barberry. It could be a 9-bark. Anything that we say grows as a multi-stem. If I look at the bottom of this is never going to be a one-trunk little tree look. There's lots of plants that grow like that. These multi-stem plants like that, I have some options. Now, yes, we'll do this one. So I can go along and I can head these back above these side buds and I could get it back into shape. You know, there's phase 1, right? Yeah, I'm a little, oop, that one's gonna be sticking out. He's hiding from me. Okay, look, I can put those in my Christmas wreath now. I think I'll save those. So if I got it kind of, well, okay, we're gonna prune, we gotta get it done, right? That's probably a little better for, think of height first. You know, I've got kind of a little nicer height. I haven't destroyed the plant. The biggest thing with these is how far do you want to dive into the middle? You know, how much do I want to thin this out and open it up? Because I've got lots of options. I mean, I get in here and I can say, okay, you're way too crowded. So let's try to get in here to the base, and I'm going to start trying to pull some pieces all the way out. I'm not leaving stubs. I'm getting down into the middle here and opening this entire thing up, which I have done to mine. I'm going to have all kinds of good wreath material here, right? So if I pull out a few pieces here, you know, am I going to get rid of everything that crosses? Maybe not. You know, that's kind of what twig dogwood does. But you can see I've just pulled 5, 6 little limbs out. Can you see how much more open it is already? It may not be your thing. You can do it either way. I have a lot of people twig dogwood just shear them and want a big twiggy colorful mess. That's fine too. But if you want to let this grow to some size, I'm going to try to focus on thinning that thing out a little bit and opening up the structure. So this could be, again, twig dogwood. If we looked on there, it could be a blueberry, for goodness sakes. But anything that I look at the bottom and I have multiple trunks growing out of the soil, that's when I don't look up here. I look at the base and say, well, what would happen if I just got rid of that big long stem? And that one right there, then you stand back and you're like, oh wow, now I got nice open airy structure and I got a great plant going forward. Okay, so there's a couple. Now conifers, this is not the time. We talked about what are we not going to prune this time of year, except for we can tip a little wreath making for conifers. It doesn't hurt them. But if I look at conifers real quick, I brought in just 2, but this is basically what our 2 choices are. So this, it could be something we could do a little bit in the winter. It's not the end of the world, but I would try to focus this on that coming out of winter time to early summer. So this, my Christmas tree, right? We call these world conifers. I think of my little Christmas tree I bring in, or a lot of the specimen evergreens we have. I always have a leader. Not going to top this to try to keep it small, but I've always got the growth. What is this growing in? Whorls or rings of branches. I've got a nice symmetry. I've got the Christmas tree shape. I mean, that really is what it is. It could be a fir, it could be a spruce, it could be a pine, it could be a lot of different trees, but that's how my growth habit is. If I let this grow for 5 years and get this big and I'm like, well, wait a minute, I want to go back to the way you were, that's not going to happen. Okay, if I have bare wood, I cannot prune to it. So if I'm going to prune something like this, I'm going to let it go. Maybe every other year and do a little bit on the outside to keep it a little bushier, maybe a little narrower if you wanted to. But this is why, probably for more any plant in the property, picking the right one is the most important thing you can do. There's no reason to waste. This is a great balsam fir called Tyler Blue. But how's $250 sound for a collector fir that 5 years later you're going to go, wait a minute, I got to get that out. It's just too big. I would never put that in my front door. I put it out where it could mature and make a stately specimen. Other things, what we call random branch conifers, like yews, juniper, cypress, believe it or not, Douglas firs like this, hemlocks are like this. The vast majority of our shrubs, ground covers, or smaller trees, I have more options. What's the difference between those two? This is almost like boxwood. I've got buds all up and down that stem of that little yew right there. So I don't maybe have to be as particular again. I could shear this. I could clip the face like my arborvitae, like the hedge, right? Excuse me. So I could shear that a little bit. Whereas this one, I'm probably not going to grab my hedge clippers and try to cut my fir, you know, or my specimen tree. A little piece here and there, perhaps. But this is something I could do whatever I wanted to. Is that kind of making sense? I've got more buds, more chance of doing the right thing, whereas this, I really have to be a little careful. I can slow it down, but I'm not going to win trying to keep a tree like this 6 feet tall and 3 feet wide. I could with the yew. Is that kind of making sense? So be careful with your conifers, but focus your pruning efforts on, you know, we'll go out and borrow all kinds of stuff. Wreath making starts here in about 2 weeks. It's a great place to come make a wreath. We got really cool evergreens to use. And I'll go around and tip things, but I'm not hurting the tree, you know, when I do it. It's going to flush back out, and off we go again next spring. But if I'm going to do it in my yard, I'm going to probably typically do that kind of coming out of the wintertime again. All right? Now, one last thing, I always bring this in to remind you. Now, we talked about what not to prune here, you know, going into the winter. Okay, we talked about evergreens. I'm not going to go prune my old wood blooming plants. You know, if I talk about forsythias, you know, anybody have forsythia, anything that blooms in the springtime, don't go prune it here in the winter. You're cutting off all your flowers. So we wait and do that after bloom again. We follow that rule. But if there's two plants I've played with in the last 20 years that I would never touch in the fall, it's hardy fuchsias and it's salvias. Who's growing hardy fuchsias? Anybody? And who's doing salvias of any kind? Now, salvias, we'll do that first, because sometimes Mother Nature just says, you're getting the new salvia, and I'm okay with that, because I go buy a few every year. The hummingbirds love me, and I love my salvias, so that's fine. But if they're going to come back, it is not by cutting it back going into winter. You're going to kill all the wood off of it, and I would be shocked if it came back next year. I've tried it both ways and all kinds of things in my own garden. So I leave salvia alone. I walk out next April and I let it tell me when it's time to prune. I look at the wood. Oh God, there's green coming back. Sweet. Then we cut the wood back and off we go for a season. I probably was 50-50 even with the 7-degree December last year. Half mine came back strong. The other ones got replaced. You know, we got them in May. And I'm fine with that because I like salvias. Hardy fuchsias to me is the same exact problem. If I have that, this will develop wood and look like a shrub as they get older, but it's still a perennial. It's going to go totally dormant after we get a hard frost. Not anytime soon. Mine are still blooming like crazy. The hardy fuchsias look great in the yard. Don't do this today or tomorrow. You're talking probably a month away still. So I'm going to walk away. I'm not going to cut it back in the fall. It's exactly the same thing. Leave it alone. Let it sit there. I'll clean up the foliage, do what I got to do to keep the slugs out of it. Throw it in the yard waste, and I'll be back out next April, and I'll look at the wood and say, oh, sweet. I got green popping out. I can cut it back hard if I want it lower, or I could leave a lot of the wood if it's up top, and I can have a bigger hardy fuchsia. I could go either way, okay? So those are two things I just try to remind people this time of year. Don't be in a rush to cut those down until we come out of wintertime, all right? So I think I'm just going to show you a couple branches here. Now, everybody's probably got a hydrangea, right? So I borrowed this from one of Steve's old hydrangeas. This is an old Aisha, cool variety. So hydrangeas are a little tough sometimes because this is an old one I know because I used to carry it years ago that only blooms on old wood. So what's going to happen if I walk out and I'm like, okay, I'm going to cut my hydrangea from here, get it nice and tidy for the winter. What's going to happen next year? No flower. Not gonna hurt my plant. I'll get leaves. It'll still grow, but I got 0 bloom. So knowing your variety is gonna be a big part of this. But with all hydrangeas, including this, New Wood Bloom, and PGs, or sun hydrangeas, which have become super popular around here. That's a great hydrangea to grow. All those things, I'm not interested in pruning those things in the fall or winter at all, okay? I deadhead, if this is at my house, because I have a few of these, I will walk out at some point in the month and I'll just take the flowers that are dry off, you know, partially because I'm OCD again, but also I don't want heavy snow, I don't want a chance of breaking stems, all the rest. Hydrangea, very green. I mean, look at that wood. You know, that's very green. It's not hardwood, it's not old wood by any means. So I'm gonna wait until March. This is something I would always go out the 1st of March every year and do your hydrangea pruning then. Not in the fall, not in December, not in the winter, but do this in the first part of March. So I can tidy it back. And again, hydrangea was opposite bud. So I had 1 flower on the top. If I go down the stem of other 2 and I cut it, now I have 2 shoots and I got 2 flowers next year. You're just gonna get more and more bloom every season, and I think have a nicer compact little plant, okay? So hydrangeas is 1. What else did I borrow from my house here? One of my lilacs. So there's the tip of one of my 20-foot lilacs. I inherited some lilacs in my house and I've gotten rid of 1 or 2, and I might have to get another one out. They're getting pretty big. But this is a big plant. You know, lilac comes in all shapes and sizes. We got dwarfs. But this is a great example of an old wood blooming plant. It just spent his entire summer setting the flower buds on the tips that I get to smell and enjoy in my yard next May, right? So I'm not gonna go out in the winter and head back and cut all my lilac back. It's not gonna kill the plant again. It's gonna grow in the spring, but I don't have any flower. So I'm gonna wait till it blooms, okay? Then I'm gonna cut it back if that's what I wanna do in my yard. The wintertime, plants like this, these old wood blooms, I'm gonna focus on the structure. I have no leaves blocking my eyesight, so I can walk out and say, okay, I can cut this back after it blooms, maybe it's too tall, but in the middle here, dead wood's out, crossing branches out, extra suckers out. The structure can be set so that you got less work to do next year, okay? We can attack it a little bit. So there's a lilac. I'm gonna have a little debris pile in here. What else do I got? All right. So anybody, I'll pretend like I'm a trunk again. So who would I be with this branch? It's off my lace leaf maple. I love maples. So this is off my lace leaf maple. It just finished doing its orange thing. See the last of the fall color. Sorry, buddy. But I borrowed a little chunk this morning, so he was happy. He's okay with that. So if I have a lace leaf maple, this is one plant we have to get done in the winter. Okay, if you come to me next May, say I gotta prune it, good luck to you, because after this leaves out, what do we have? A big thick shell. I can't see anything as far as the structure. I can temporarily get it off the grass, you know, do what I gotta do. It's not gonna look any better the next winter, but wintertime is when I can pick a day, hopefully not a rainy day, but then I got a little blue sky, sometime December, January, February, I can almost get up underneath it, look through the shell, and get rid of all the dead wood that's underneath, and really get my thing pruned up and opened up. This is such a personal choice plant with me. I can tell you, I like mine super open, almost bonsai. I like the structure, I like to see the trunk, all the twists and the turns. Other people just want an umbrella. There's a couple down the road here that are umbrellas. You probably drive by those all the time, Alita. It's like, I just want to get out and like, can I prune this for you, please? But I don't have time, right? So the biggest thing with lace leaves, and frankly, Japanese maples on a lot of other plants, is just the old wood. If I look at the structure, the outside shell is fine, but if you haven't touched yours for a while, if you look in the middle of that thing, I bet you're gonna find a bazillion dead branches. It doesn't mean it's diseased, it doesn't mean it's dying, it doesn't mean any of those things. If I have, you can see it on the coral bark, if I have grayish, beigeish little tip wood here and there or branches, that's just natural dieback. What are you gonna do if you're hanging out in the shade? You're gonna run out of gas. Something else has already replaced you by covering you back up. So I find with a lot of lace leaves, if you have not done yours or not for a while, if you simply get underneath it and literally look at the color of the wood, you don't need a pruner sometimes, and just snap all that dead wood out of the middle, rake it out of there and stand back, you're probably gonna go, wow, I got a new plant. I mean, it really does look like a brand new plant, where you probably don't have to go back and do a lot of extra pruning. Just getting that dead wood out of there will make a huge difference. You can't see it in the summer, and it's especially if you're like me and you like to set your structure and the character of the tree a little bit. In winter time's the time to do it. That's the one thing we have to get done in the winter. I can go prune my coral bark in next May, next July. I can do it a bunch of times a year, but the lace leaf, really got to get it done in the winter time. Okay. There's another one I'll put on the pile here. So let me show. Oh, so here's a good example. This. I finally found my blueberry branch. Right. We'll do this in the spring. But this is the top of one of my blueberries. Right. Everyone know about blueberries? You got high blueberries. So this is really no different than twig dogwood. It's no different than spirea, barberry, forsythia. We can go on and on. There's all kinds of plants that grow with this same kind of multi-stem structure like that. So if I'm going to prune my blueberry, what do I have with the growth cycle here? I'm getting down into old wood. I took this off of the trunk, but this is my new growth, right, this year. So where's my flower buds? Right here. So I'm not going to go out this winter and go, oh, let's cut my blueberry back because I just cut off all the crap that I want to walk out and eat next year. I'm going to look at it and try to thin it again and not head it back. And I'm looking for stuff like this. I got a little black wood there. Let's get you out of there. Okay. If I had more than one stem, super crowded, I'm going all the way to the base and I'm taking that old piece of wood all the way out, opening it up for more growth. Okay. So again, it's not, this edible one isn't easy because we want to maximize our crop, but this could be like, who's got rosy glow barberry, you know, or big fountain shrubs, forsythia, anything like that. It's not necessarily this. I'm looking at the bottom of it and going, okay, I'm not going to cut all my flowers off and I'm going to get to enjoy here coming out of winter, but I can get this thing thinned out when I can access it, get rid of some of that wood at the base, open it up for fresh growth. And then, like, take forsythia, for example. I could enjoy those beautiful yellow flowers late January, February, and then when it's done blooming, I could cut the damn thing back to the ground if I wanted to. If you know forsythia, here it comes again. You know, and all that wood that grows this year, there's my bloom next year again. And I kind of follow that cycle. Is that kind of making sense? Okay? We'll do some more berry stuff as we get into the classes in January. We'll do all the berries. Now the last one here, we'll do some questions. Now I just brought this as an example. I kind of felt bad. This is off my purple ghost maple. It's a beautiful tree, probably 20 feet by 20 feet in my backyard, and it's got great foliage. It hasn't quite turned yet, which it will here pretty quick, but look at the seeds on that thing. It's just beautiful this year. But I brought this as an example, because if I have a big limb like that, what did I do when I cut this off at the trunk? I thinned it out, right? I didn't leave. I'm not going to cut it, leave a stub. I took this all the way to the trunk and said, I'm taking you to classes as an example. And it was low, you know, a little bit low. I'm 6'3", and I'm like, okay, that one can go because it's starting to hit my bald head when I'm mowing the lawn underneath it, kind of thing. So I took it out of there. Now my choices are this. You know, is there anything wrong with it? Not necessarily. I've got mosses and lichens, which some people don't like. A little character here and there is all right. But I could certainly thin it out. You know, I can start looking at this thing and going, you know what? I've got hostas, I've got bulbs, I've got shrubs, I've got all kinds of cool stuff underneath that thing. It's in too much shade. I'm not trying to cut my tree back. I'm not trying to butcher it. I want to open it up a little bit so that I get more light in there. So that's what I'm saying. Thinning is your friend. You know, I could walk through here and cut some little pieces out here and there and just opened up the tree. I'm not changing the shape, I'm not butchering it back, I'm not changing the direction, I'm just making it more open and airy. I mean, if I take a few little pieces out right there, maybe we'll get one more. I'm not looking the right angle here. Maybe one more there. Ooh, I could even get that one out of here. You know, I can thin out as much as I want. You know, I haven't changed my tree, but look at how much more daylight is going to get through that tree during the growing season, okay? I can also, you know, if I wanted to go the other direction and say, okay, this piece right here is getting a little too close to my camellia, which this one actually is. So this one here, I could go, okay, well then now we can head it back, but I'm going to be more careful. Can you see my pruners? Which one I'm going to cut it to. Let's say that I want it to go that way next year. Okay, it looks like I pruned it, but after this grows, it won't. If I'm like, you know what, I want you to go the other way, now we're going that direction, okay? But I'm never gonna go, oh, let's prune my maple, and I'm gonna do that because I see it all the time. Trust me. It's like, oh, here, that branch is getting too long. There's my pruning job. That's the good, the bad, and the super ugly right there. That is not acceptable. You'd be banned. I'm just kidding. Dude. You know, the funny thing with plants, you know, if I just did that, it probably will grow again. I hate to say, it probably will start growing again. A couple years down the road, you'd be like, oh, it doesn't so bad, but that's not how we would do it. All right. So I think we got all the plant branches out of here. I got a mess everywhere. Anybody get hit by anything?
Nope.
No one's suing me? All right, just making sure. You sue Sunnyside, not me, Rick.
Yeah.
All right, so who's got some plants they want to ask about? Yes.
Is that an evergreen huckleberry?
This is same idea as evergreen huckleberry. This is an ilex, a Japanese holly.
Oh.
So boxwood, Japanese holly, evergreen huckleberry would be the same way.
So
if I now springtime, the huckleberry is a little hard for broadleaf because I don't know about you, but I like my little huckleberries on ice cream, so I try to protect when they're going to bloom.
My question. So you can.
So if I'm going to prune that plant, evergreen huckleberry, again, knowing your plant, you asked is a perfect thing. I have huckleberry. I want the berries. When do I prune it? So that's an after coming out of winter only. If I go do that in the summer, you're cutting off your flower buds and your berries for the year. So if I do this in spring, my growth comes up, I set my flower buds, they bloom in the summer, I harvest my huckleberries late summer, fall. Yeah, easy as that. Yeah, you should be able to prune easy. That's a plant, huckleberry. Sometimes I will go down, I volunteer at the Arboretum a lot in Everett, and I'll go down and borrow a lot of the red foliage chips for the Christmas wreath again, so it doesn't hurt to prune it in the fall. But that wood is not there for production. So, yes?
I got a rose from somebody that rooted it, so I don't know what it is, except it's an old rose.
Okay.
And it sort of grows kind of like a fountain and everywhere.
Uh-huh.
And it's sort of taking over everything.
Yep.
So do I prune it from the center, or do I prune it from the branches?
I would go both with an old rose. You really want to try to control the size a little bit. I'm not saying you're going to go down to knee by any means. When I always say that, let me say this real quick. It freaks me out because I should be more specific on roses. If I had a climbing rose, I'm not cutting it down to my knee every year. This is bushes. Climbers, I want to build structure. I'm getting rid of anything, say, skinnier than a pencil. I'm going to still tidy it, cut it back a bit, but I'm not going to let it start over every year because I'm trying to get it over something, okay? Yours is probably an old rambler like that. So I don't have a problem with some height, but you is going to be the middle again. I want to open up that center. It doesn't change the fact that I still want air, I want sun, and I want to keep that center open a little bit.
Yeah, the flowers are gorgeous, but the thing is it will eat you alive if you go near it.
Oh yeah. So. That sounds like Rose. Let the deer come prune it for you, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
I have weeping cherries that are about 3 years old.
Yep.
And some of the original branches from the very top have never leafed out.
Okay.
How or do I take those off?
Take them, go all the way down to the main trunk. So weeping cherry is another one. Let me say this because it brings up a good point. Weeping plants, the cherry, the crabapple, the conifer, I don't care what it is. If it's a weeping plant, you are going to tell it what you want it to do. You know, if I do a weeping cherry, I could take you down the road here and show you your weeping cherry, that your brain is picturing this little perfect 6 foot tall umbrella, right? Try like 30 feet tall, 30 feet across. So if I don't prune that, it's just going to keep going and going. And they're magnificent trees when they get old, but you've got to keep that thing tidied down. That's a great example of prune after bloom. If I had cherry in my yard, especially the weeping one, I'm not touching it in the winter because I accept dead wood, but I'm going to let that thing bloom its little heart away in February and March, and as soon as it's done blooming, I'm taking all those branches quite a bit up because they're going to shoot right back down. If you don't, you're going to have cherry here and then across the ground at the bottom because it's not going to stop. I can also, anything weeping, lace leaf's almost the same way. We looked at the maple. I'm always going to grow and just keep building myself on top of what's already there, right? So if I want a little height, let it go for a few years. But at some point, I'm thinking you're going to want to keep yours down so we really watch the top of it and keep those branches going side to side. So if you've got dead wood, again, I don't care if we're doing this class today, December, May, next September, I don't care what time of the year. If you got dead wood, get it out. You know, that's a quick little, if I have any plant, I'm not close to any wood, if I got my coral bark here, I'm going to take my fingernail or my pruner and I can always see bright green cambium underneath the bark tissue. So if I'm like, I don't know, is that dead or not? Give it a little nick. Oops, dead. Get it out of there. Yeah, get it out. Yes.
Curly willow.
Yes.
Took it out of a pot and put it in the ground, and now it's like.
Oh, it's going huge.
So how should I just needed to keep it more.
Well, contorted willow's going to be a big plant, but it certainly is prunable. Okay.
It is.
So the biggest thing with willow in particular is we've got some disease issues with those on occasion. I'll be honest with you, in wet spring, that absolutely is going to need a copper at some point over the winter. Okay, that's going to help you with the disease and the blight and the dieback and all that. But you could, my mother's is probably 30 feet tall, and I went down there and cut it in half 3 or 4 times over the years and just let it start over again. Both ways, width. If you cut willow, anybody knows willow, I mean, you probably chop it off with a trunk, and you're going to see, here it comes again. I mean, willow just tends to keep going.
What I did last year, I literally took it to one stick.
Yep, and then it'll go crazy every year. Willows love wet, so the more water we got in there, the more it's going to grow, the faster it's going to be. Yeah. Yes.
We have 3 spireas that we've never
Pruned. Okay.
And they've been there for 13 years.
Yeah. I'll cut them. You could cut those way.
Cut them all the way back.
That's a absolutely break the 1/3 rule planting.
Okay,
I got a buddy on Bainbridge, and I was at his house for the first time. I was like, dude, you got to prune the spirea, man. He's like, what do you mean? He's got magic carpet, which should be like a 2-3 foot spreading plant. His was like 8 feet tall, sitting on the side of the house, and I'm like, give me your pruners. His wife's like, oh my God, is that gonna? Yes, it'll grow.
Well,
they called the next year, like, dude, spirea looks perfect again. Thanks.
Ours stayed low.
Yeah. So I mean, spirea is the most absolute no-brainer shrub to me. I mean, you could do whatever you want to it. If you want some height, let it grow. I mean, but my stuff is, I don't care what you did in the year. I'm always about right there with all of mine because I just start over again. You got bloom instantly. Yeah, really easy to cut back.
Right.
Yeah, you might have to get a little saw for some of the wood on your 13-year-old spirea. That may not be quite easy for the hedge trimmer.
Well, they've stayed small because they've been in the shade.
Yep.
And they don't get a lot of water there.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, but you'll see a brand new plant next year if you cut them back. Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
So, what if you pruned and you've developed? Are they suckers?
Yeah.
And what do you do with the suckers?
What plant is it?
Maples.
Maples. Okay. Well, we were looking at a couple pictures for a class today. Some of this is a little bit of what our weather does. In years where we have extra long, wet spring, maple that typically grows this, all of a sudden has got like 4-foot little spindles out of the top. Coral bark is a great example of one that does that. But they did it in my yard this year too. So if I walk out and I just do this and cut them all off, the same thing is going to just continue to happen. What you've got to do is take a second and go, okay, it's developing the structure, the shape I want long term, but I don't need 6 of them growing 5 feet tall up their side. Sometimes it might be take the whole thing out, but a lot of times it's going to be thin most of them out, leave one, and then cut those back about halfway. Because if I take this, as we look at this tree, if I take any one of these shoots back, I can cut it back to a side branch. Well, let's just say this is a skinny piece of wood. If I still cut above a bud, next year I get 2 branches, and now I start to develop the structure I want, right? It's not going to be so tall and leggy.
So what I've done is obviously an incorrect prune on a thin, and the suckers are like
coming out.
on a major.
Do you leave a little stub?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
And it's
So go back and literally get a little pocket saw or something, and don't, leaving this is not the end of the world. And if I leave anything on any plant, especially maple, you're going to see like 20 of them try to come out of that thing. So we get nice and easy cut. You won't have, it'll heal up. You won't have issues.
And then do we spray after we prune?
It's a good idea on some. Again, I don't want you to go home and prune everything today, and I don't want anybody to go home and spray their entire yard. That's not what this is about. If I take coral bark, I'll be honest with you, if that's the tree I have in my yard, I am absolutely at some point this winter pruning it and hitting it with copper, just because I'm trying to protect my coral bark. It's very susceptible to getting black wood, or what we call pseudomonas. If you had another maple, it wouldn't be. I mean, it's not the end of the world. So it's just almost plant by plant. But if you're looking to protect yourself, that would be the process. If I had a plant that I'm worried about or had disease, I would prune it, clean up debris. That stuff goes out of there. Do not leave crappy disease foliage as mulch. It needs to go So the first thing it's going to do is get right back on that same plant next year. Now I prune, I clean up, now I can spray, and I've got my shield up for the wintertime.
Disinfecting your pruners?
Yep, great question. I should add that to my list because we always ask that every year. I would absolutely disinfect, and it's not, I don't want you to think I walk around with rubbing alcohol in one pocket and pruners in another, and every time I cut, I'm disinfecting my pruners. But if I'm going plant to plant, or for me, I'd go help somebody fix this or go to the arboretum and then back to my yard, I'm disinfecting it. I don't want the chance of something bad getting from plant to plant, yard to yard, season to season. Rubbing alcohol works great. That's usually what I typically use. Bleach isn't the end of the world. Just make sure you really wash it off before you get back into plant tissue. But if I was being a cautious, a prudent gardener, even in my own landscape, and I looked at plants, maples, roses, whatever it was, and you're even the inkling that, I don't know, man, was that bad wood, good wood, disease, twig blight, whatever it is, sterilize it before you go touch on a plant. Yeah. The easiest way is a pathogen or disease. It's always physical contact from pruners like that. We transfer it plant to plant. The rest of it blows around the wind and the rain. There's nothing we can do to stop wind and the rain, but put shields up so that hopefully when that spore lands, it doesn't find an environment that's going to allow it to proliferate into disease.
So if you're pruning a diseased rose,
Yeah,
can
absolutely.
you prune the whole thing?
Prune the whole thing. I'm sterilizing before I go touch a healthy rose.
Okay,
Absolutely.
but you don't have to do it in between.
Not in between cuts. Yeah. If you have a problem in the wood, it's in that plant. Okay. Until I physically take it to another one, it's going to stay there. Yeah. Yes.
Hey, Karen,
Yeah.
is that another one to leave until spring?
So you're talking like the floral berries, the shrubs. So that's a great question because again, there's so many plants. I wish I could bring 80 things in here. We'd be here till we're already here after an hour. We'll be here till 3 o'clock today. But hypericum, the snowberries, all this stuff that blooms again on new wood and produces a berry, I can do whatever I want to it coming out of winter. So if I was you, my hypericum, if you wanted a tall plant, don't prune it as much. If it was me, I'd be cutting those twigs down to about 6-8 inches above the ground, letting it start over again. You got a great brandy plant, you got no bad foliage, you got maximum bloom, and you got your berries.
And
Yeah.
you do that now.
Well, we could do it now, but that's one, if it was mine in my yard and I have an orange one because I like orange, that's like a February project to me. Yeah, again, it's not the end of the world if we do it now, but you could do it later. Yeah. Yes.
I have a rose of Sharon.
Yep.
But it's a rose, and every time I look it up or whatever, I think it's 12.
Yep. Nice old one.
What do I do with that?
So, Rose of Sharon is one of my favorite shrubs, first of all. I got a couple in my own yard. Gives you a little taste of the tropics without being there kind of thing. Rose of Sharon is new wood. So you could do, honestly, whatever you wanted to do with that at the end of winter. Cut it back. I would thin it out for sure. Open it up. But if I really wanted to head that back, it's going to look like you pruned it. I'm not going to lie to you. It's going to recover and look better, but it's still going to bloom. You're not going to sacrifice your flower next year. Yeah, I mean, I have an old one called Blushing Bride I put in probably 20 years ago, and it was about what you're saying, 10 foot by 8. It's on the corner. It was almost blocking the stop sign of the road. So, I mean, I bit the bullet last year, and it got lopped off 3-4 feet. It looks great now after one summer. Yeah.
I'm willing to do that. I also have a Nootka rose.
Yep.
Nootka rose. Now they seem to be something, it's tall. They're
Yeah,
tall.
yeah, and again, but rose is a rose. I mean, that's, hybrid. We don't. It's not like we never sell Nootka rose. It's a native one. There's nothing wrong with it. But roses are roses. You could literally, you're going to have to put on some armor, and a couple of layers of tin cloth or whatever. But you could get in there. I mean, literally, if you went in and just cut the whole thing off, a foot off the ground, it's not going to hurt the plant. You got a brand new looking rose next year.
Okay.
Yeah.
In February or.
Exactly. I would always, to me, again, roses in particular, I don't mind tidying it up in November. This year, I don't think you're going to be Veterans Weekend. I think you're going to be waiting because they're still blooming. It hasn't gotten that cold. Other years it might be now, but the more important thing to me would be the February. I get to President's Week. No matter what you are doing, I'm starting you over again because I don't want to leave what's left from last year for next year. Yeah. Yes.
I have a row of boxwoods,
Yep.
and in the summer they don't last a little bit by irrigation, and half of the plants, there's globes. Half of it turns brown.
Okay.
Another half is still green. So what should I do with that?
Maybe you'd send me a picture. I hate to tell you, if it's brown, it's probably not going to come back. I mean, I've seen boxwood come back a couple of years later, but if you've got like brownie, kind of that orangey brown and green, that, like you said, something's going on with the root system. Usually it's too wet. So we get dial down the irrigation if we replace them. I've had a lot of people, and again, I love boxwood, so I'm not ripping boxwood, but I've had a lot of people go to that versus boxwood because Japanese holly, there's some other newer boxwoods now that have come out that it just doesn't happen like that. Old English boxwood, it tends to. It really does. Oh, you got pruning overload? We got one more? Go ahead.
I picked up a dwarf campus grass.
Yep.
You guys,
Dwarf.
dwarf. Yeah. I know you don't like fun. But so I put it in maybe 6 weeks ago. And
Yeah.
it's doing great.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean I put it in a spot ground in the yard.
Okay.
And it just,
Oh, it's gonna fill it up. Yeah.
yeah. So you know all of those
Feather dusters
feather
are out.
dusters have come out
Yeah.
now. Am I supposed to cut those off?
If it was me, and again, this would be like the taller grasses. I have miscanthus, other things similar to that. I wouldn't be in a rush to cut pampas grass back. It might be a little different year to year. That's the one grass up here that, you know, from the Carolinas and maybe a little warmer climes. If we were over in Myrtle Beach, you'd probably never touch your pampas grass because it would be a big 8-foot evergreen grass that looks great year round. If we get a cold winter, you're going to go out there in March and probably be sawing that thing off, letting it start over again. If it's not a cold winter, you're probably not going to touch it at all.
Okay.
So the feather dusters, I would leave them on just because I think that's the coolest part of pampas grass, if you ask me, is the bloom.
Right.
You know, I'd enjoy them as long as you want in the fall. Cut them, use them in arrangements.
Oh, okay.
You could leave them alone. Come springtime, yes, if they're still on, we would deadhead those stalks out.
Okay.
And then we would either make the choice to, again, we're not ever cutting it in half. It's either, oh, you look good, keep going, or we start you over again. Yeah,
Right.
one of those two choices.
Okay.
Yep.
I have a new hibiscus.
Yep.
Do I prune it back? It's in a pot right now, but as it gets bigger, do I prune it back or I just
Is
let it
that the
die off?
perennial type hibiscus?
Yeah.
Okay. That would kind of be like the salvia hardy fuchsia to me. I wouldn't do a whole lot to that in the fall before winter. We want, if anything, I would pile mulch up around the crown and really try to protect that thing.
Okay.
It's not.
It's not-
It's. I'll be honest. It's been a tough perennial me to grow. You got to have maximum sun. You got to have great drainage. I mean, we got to watch the wintertime a little bit. Don't give up. The hardest thing with those hibiscus is they aren't going to do a damn thing up here until we get to X amount of temperature, and the X amount of temperature is probably getting up there in the mid 70s. So you walk out next April, you're like it's dead. You walk out next May, most of the years, it's dead. Then you get to June, and you're like, oh, here we go, and off we go for the season. So if it was me, I would mulch it. I certainly don't mind deadheading it, but I would leave some structure and mulch the crap out of the crown. Springtime, move the mulch away, get some good food on it, and then we cross our fingers and toes and off we go.
Okay, thanks.
The duck, there we go.
I want to get back to the dwarf pampas grass.
Yeah.
Because I bought some last year, end of the summer, put it in, enjoyed it all winter.
Yeah.
It was beautiful. Cut it off in the spring,
Uh-huh.
but it didn't bloom feathers this year. So did I cut it too late?
Maybe a little late, if any. It might, was it just like, was it gallon plants?
Yeah.
Because I hate to say this, but a lot of the growers will just pump food on those things like there's no tomorrow, and you probably get a little bloom quicker than you should. I think you'll get a bunch next year.
Okay.
I don't. It's not necessarily a timing thing because you can't do anything but wait till after winter. If anything, again, it's like the evergreen grass I pulled out earlier. If I'm going to make the choice to start that over, I'm not a big, huge fertilizer guy. I mean, it's not like I run around my yard with steroids and do it every 2 weeks. If I'm going to prune that, it needs some food. I want to let it know, hey, let's get going and get rejuvenated here. So if it was me and you did it this year, I would probably do the same thing, but I would add a really nice rim, you know, of basically nitrogen, but or even a rose and flower food or a tree shrub type food. Let that there to let it get going and get some size back. Yeah, yeah. We got pruning overload. Oh, we got one more. Yes. Smoke tree. You say smoke tree, I say smoke bush. Which one do you want? So Smoke trees are a great example. I almost brought one. That's funny you brought. I almost brought one in here. I was like, I got too many plants in. So that one is really on what you want to do for pruning, what size it is. I've seen smoke tree 20 feet tall. I've seen the same exact cultivar 4 feet tall look like a shrub. So if you want the blooms, you can't cut it back quite as hard. Okay, I can tidy, I can thin, I can do all the stuff we've talked about. But if I go from 6 feet to 3 feet, I'm gonna have great foliage, which is why I would buy the smoke tree, the great leaves, nice fall color, but I'm probably not gonna get as much flower, okay? So tidying it back down the stems like I did with the Tug Dogwood, that's not an issue. But if I really decide to cut it back, it'll grow, but I won't get the flowers as much.
Yeah, I think the trunk is probably.
Yeah, so I mean, again, it sounds like you want tree, which is about 50-50. Other people want it for the shrub size, but that's you're pruning it properly. If anything, you're going to be doing the opposite of what we talked about, thinning out any of the lower wood and getting it up over the garden so that it's a beautiful tree, because they do make beautiful trees as well. Yeah. Yeah.
Can you recommend arborists?
You know, we do. I'll be honest, this is a really tough conversation because, you know, we know some people around here. The two people we really did know, both retired now. So we have some cards in there, some good arborists, and I'm not saying they're bad, but I would really tell them what you want. Because I've heard arborists, like, dude, you can't tell me an arborist came in and did that to your tree. Are you kidding me? And a lot of I'll call them landscapers because they're not even landscapers at that point. No, they will, oh yeah, I'm an arborist, I'll teach you how to prune. Yeah, give me a break.
So that's
if
what
they don't
I'm
have ISA after their name, they are not an arborist.
So a 30-foot, 20-year-old flowering cherry.
Mm-hmm, yep.
And it's looking like it
Needs some
and I
help.
wanna touch it. I
Yeah.
love it.
No, I mean, that to me is a perfect job to have an arborist come assist you with. But I would interview a couple, have them come out and say, you know, don't even maybe say anything, but this is your tree. What are you going to do with it? And listen to what he says, because, oh, you know, I'll just get in and chainsaw this and cut that. It's like, dude, I could get my chainsaw and coppice that thing into a mess for you in 5 minutes. I'm looking for you to get in there and thin it out and make it look better. And again, timing is everything with that. If you don't care about next March, April, looking out and seeing your cherry in full bloom, you could do it anytime over the winter. It's not going to hurt the tree. If you were going to maximize your flower, I'd be calling him next spring and have him come over and prune it after it blooms. Yeah. Yes.
So I have a beautiful dogwood that I bought from you guys, and I absolutely love it.
Yep.
Over the last few years, the bloom has decreased in number.
Okay.
And I went out there and I counted them for next year.
Little bishop's hat, not enough.
I'm a little disappointed.
Okay.
How can I encourage
So-
more bloom?
I talked about this in the summer in a couple of classes because one thing I discovered pretty recently, just a few years ago, is a product called Ultra Bloom. Okay?
Okay.
So, how can I explain this easily? So these plants, it's a lot of times it's dogwood. I'll be honest, magnolia is another one I get a lot of questions about. Why did I buy it from you and it had 12 flowers and I've seen 3 and 4 years since? That's about the summer. It has nothing to do but next summer. So I spend, after I bloom, June, July, August, September, if I don't walk out like you've done and look and say, ooh, dude, I got my flower buds, I'm ready to go for next year, you got nothing. So what I started doing, and it's not just that, it's rhodies, azaleas. I do it on a lot of my trees and shrubs now. It's not nitrogen, it's not that, it's phosphorus, potassium. So I get big bags of Ultra Bloom now, and I'll pick one day in June, and I will literally, I'm not measuring it, I'm grabbing handfuls, it doesn't matter. I'm walking around and your Seaview Sunset Rhodie, I want more flowers. Dogwood tree, I want more flowers. I'm broadcasting that in the soil underneath it, watering it in or doing it when it rains. When that's available to the plant and I don't let it dry out or get drought stressed, I think you're going to see a huge difference in the amount of potential for the next season.
Great, because we just,
If
I guess the best word is adopted.
Yeah.
Rhododendrons
Yeah.
that I wanted rid of.
Well, and I'll be honest with rhodies. I mean, I inherited an old 50s house. And believe it or not, the guy that taught horticulture at Everett Community College, it's his house. I'm like, yes. So there's some cool plants that I tried to save kind of in his memory. Other stuff went away, and I don't need 1958, this and that. It's gone. I got modern stuff in. The biggest difference in the last 10, 20 years, the modern rhododendron, as an example, needs to be fed more than old. I'll be brutally honest. If I have, like I have, Seaview Sunset, Starbright Champagne. These really cool rhododendrons. If I don't feed them, I'm not going to get very much flower the next year. Whereas if I had old Jean Marie, or I call it Unic because there's nothing unique about the unique rhododendron, all that stuff, I probably don't have to worry about feeding it as much. A little rhodey food, I'm good to go. You know, but if I want, again, dogwood made the huge difference with me. That's why I perked up and was like, dude, that's my Venus dogwood 10 years ago. Like, that's it? And this year, I'm telling you, I'll put a picture of my phone and show you, but like dinner plate flowers. I couldn't even see the dang tree. It was white, the entire tree, covered in flowers.
And that was ultra bloom.
And that's just that extra little ultra bloom. That one, it's not every 2 weeks, it's not a bunch of times. One time on some of those old plants that spend their summer budding, if I keep them wet, I'm not soaking wet, but I can't let them dry out, and I add that extra fertilizer, the phosphorus makes all the difference in the world to me.
And you do that in June.
Absolutely. I walk out, it's either late May, June at some point, everything in the yard now, witch hazel, all that stuff, because then I don't see it now, but when it comes to the next season, it's like, oh my God, look how many flowers on my, whatever the plant it is. It really does help. Yeah.
I need a plant identified so I can go shopping. Is this a Japanese holly?
Yes, Japanese holly.
Oh, okay.
So this is,
So get whatever.
this
I
is
can get.
probably, well, the hardest thing with Japanese holly is you're going to see, okay, actually you got two different things here.
Well,
so-
it's from the same one.
Really?
It's that whole
Well,
thing
you
there.
got one, you got osmanthus mixed in there. I think this is osmanthus. Well, no, he's Japanese
looked-
holly.
yeah,
you
it
don't have any
looked
flowers. So you got two different kinds in there. Somebody replaced
Huh.
one at some point. This
Okay.
looks like Green Island. That
Uh-huh.
looks like old Hellerai, an old
And
variety.
that's not what I'm used to.
Yeah.
It's more
So you
that.
want green? You get Green Island out there.
And you've
yeah.
got that.
Yeah,
here.
we've got some
okay.
out there.
And I think I
This
have
is
weevil
this
in
is
there.
this is convex leaf. See how the leaf is rolled?
Yeah.
That's the same plant, but a little different texture.
This is green.
It looks like Green Island to me.
Island.
Yeah, Green
Okay,
Island.
thank you.
Yep. All right, got a couple more? Yes.
Yeah, I have an older lilac. Doesn't get a lot of sun,
Okay.
but anyway, it's gotten fairly woody down below.
Yeah.
But it's really nice and full higher up. I know there's new growth coming up from down below.
Yep.
Will that actually fill in, or should I cut them off?
Well, okay, two things with the lilac. So one, we're not going to fight the way the lilac grows, and that's exactly how they grow.
Okay.
I'm going to have open trunks, top heavy foliage with my flower, and suckering off the root system.
Okay.
So it's not going to change anything because that's how they grow. You mentioned the new stuff, totally different. If I buy a Korean lilac, a bloomerang, a dwarf variety, now I've got a 6 foot thick shrub to the ground. It's just a different creature. So there's nothing, I have both. There's nothing wrong with either one, but you know, this is the, I'll be honest, this is the decision I'm going to be making in my yard this winter. I mentioned I've got a couple that I probably could get 20 foot on two of the ones in my backyard. And I'm like, you know what? I like my Lion's Head maple better. I like this better. That's going to have to either get severely cut back or it's got to go. I've already gotten rid of one. I got two left. So do I leave, 4 or 5 foot suckers that grew off the root system and take the entire 8-inch trunk and go chop it up and chip it and be run with it? It'll grow. You're probably not going to get any flower that next season, but it'll grow and it'll keep going.
Okay.
But that is going to do exactly the same thing as it did before eventually. It's never going to get side branching and look bushy like another shrub. It's never going to do that on old French lilacs.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So picking up from there, we planted ours too close to the house.
Okay.
I think we need to move it.
Move it out.
Is
Yeah.
that all right? Can I
Yeah.
And when do I move
It,
it?
how big are the trunks on it?
Between 2 and 3 inches.
Oh, you'd be fine.
Okay.
Yeah. Lilac is a plant. This isn't for all the plants. I'm gonna say that. But lilac's a plant we can almost bare root. We a lot of times buy those in chopped off roots, throw them in a pot, and off they go. I mean, it's a plant you can divide a little easier. So do it this winter is the big thing. If I'm gonna move anything in the yard, I'm gonna divide it. I'm gonna chop it. I'm gonna splice it. I'm gonna dice it. That needs to be done here during the dormant season. So try to get it. You're gonna have a much tougher time doing that next spring and summer when it's in leaf.
So would that be true of my rose bush that's also in the wrong
Rose
spot?
bush, lilac, perennial, all the above. Yeah, you want to do that all during the dormant season. Yes.
I have a blueberry, huckleberry, and lingonberry,
Okay.
and they all still have their leaves.
Yep.
The berries
Oh,
are
yeah.
gone. When do I?
Tie them back. So the blueberry, all that stuff's gonna be at the tail end of winter or spring. I wouldn't be in a rush to do any of it right now.
March.
So probably March. Yeah. The blueberry, is it deciduous blueberry? It's already turned color, or is it one of the evergreen ones?
Yes.
Okay. So the blueberry, I could do it earlier if I wanted, but again, it's not, I don't know, my blueberry branch is long gone. It's not, I'm gonna do this. It's all the way at the base. I'm gonna pull big, huge pieces out to open it up, because then I get more fresh wood off the root system. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I can do that anytime here, winter to early spring. Now the huckleberry and your lincolnberry, you're gonna wanna wait till after frost. Those have evergreen leaves on them. So I'm gonna wait till we get into probably mid-March, early April, and then I'm gonna do my tidying on those as needed. Yeah.
So only tidying up the blueberries that are
High bush, yeah, like old northern high bush, deciduous blueberries.
deciduous.
Yeah, if again, thinning out at the base, the modern blueberries, the Bountiful Blues, the Sunshine Blues, all these new ones that we probably sell more of now than old high bush, at the tail end of winter after frost, I can do the same thing. I can thin them out a little bit, and I can shear lightly, but if I cut down too far, again, I'm cutting off all the bloom that got set last year to give me the maximum berries this year. So sometimes, like with mine, what I do, because I have Bountiful Bloom in my yard, that's like a July thing in my place. Because I pick my fruit, shear it back, let it regrow, feed it, let it regrow, set flower buds, and I'm good to go for the next season again.
Right now to do them.
I wouldn't cut the Bountiful Blue stuff down at all until now that you're out of next winter for those at this point, which is fine either way. The high bush stuff, again, wait a couple weeks till we get a hard frost. Mine are still in full orange and red flower color mode, and then do that over the winter.
High bush, are those deciduous?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so
Yeah, so anybody live in Everett, like I live up above Lowell, I'm looking at about 5 million high bush blueberries that fill the whole valley out there now. Those farms planted a bazillion of them. Yeah. Yes.
And how about letting some leaves be the mulch?
Yeah.
Some plant-
Again, I want to make sure this is clear. My OCD-ness is not contagious. Just because I choose to run around and maybe tidy some things up, that's my own problem. It's not yours. I leave leaves. I make myself leave foliage. What I keep bringing up is disease. If I have any issue, qualm, thought, rose, all should be cleaned up. You know, there's certain plants we need. Peonies, absolutely, I think should be cleaned up. Other things that won't matter. Blueberry, I wouldn't worry about at all. You know, I go around this is what I do at my house. So I go around my lawn. I have huge Japanese maples everywhere. I'm a maple addict among many things. So that's clean, good foliage to me. I will leap all that up, wheelbarrow it over, and I will literally bury my vegetable beds, my raised gardens, my rounders, all that stuff will get buried with leaf mulch to protect it for the winter time. Spring, turn it over, scrape it off, do whatever you want to, but I'm protecting myself for winter. I'm not going to do that with my dogwood tree because of anthracnose. I'm not going to do it with my peony. I'm worried about blight. I'm not going to do it with my rose. There's certain things I'm not going to do that with. But clean foliage, absolutely. Don't run around and you don't have to shop back up the yard. I don't get quite that far. Yes.
So I'm lucky enough to have an old cedar stump with red huckleberry.
Nice.
It looks like a chia pet.
Yes, I like that.
And you know, have to get up on a ladder to
Oh, yeah.
berries. How can I increase the berries? What do I need to do to make sure that this
Is it in mostly shade?
Yes.
Okay, it
because
should
it's
be,
hidden
yeah.
behind a hemlock
Yeah.
and another.
So those
nut.
love acidity, and maybe a little dose of food might help you too. I might not go for the fruit berry type fertilizer. I'm going for the rhododendron style on there. I think if you put a little dose on that, because I have the same thing going. I made myself a stump so I could grow one of those underneath one of my backyard plants. Because those are sweet berries. I like a little tart, so they're really good. And I get great production every year in minimal light, but I do a rhodi dose around that area at least once every kind of latest spring. Then you should be good to go with that.
So I don't need to get up in there.
If you want to thin it back a little, it's not gonna hurt the plant.
Right.
But you know, you've seen huckleberries out growing, nurse logs out hiking everywhere. It's just what it does. You kind of get the chia pet green wood look to it, and that's how they grow. Exactly, exactly. Yes.
How about trumpet creeper?
The trumpet vine.
Yeah.
Besides using herbicide, no, I'm just
Oh
kidding.
no! On my front porch. I love it, but
Trumpet vine's pretty rampant, so be careful because it goes everywhere.
I usually cut the new growth back to
yeah.
1 or 2 buds.
Exactly, that's what I would
Is that
do.
about right? Okay.
Cutting them back, they grow so fast every spring, and that's another one. You don't do much till we get some heat.
right.
You know, and then we start to get bloom late summer, you know, kind of deal. But yeah, tidying it back. I mean, I'm surprised nobody's asked me about vines. Wisterias would be the same discussion. Grapes would be the same discussion. A lot of those vines like that, we don't want all that mess. We want to cut back to the good chunks of that old wood because that's what's going to produce the flower the next year, not that little tendril growth that grew 10 feet in one season. Yes?
I have what I think is a red twig willow
Okay.
that's maybe 10 feet by 6 feet.
Okay.
And what is way too big?
Uh-huh.
How do I cut it back?
Oh, is it red twig dogwood, I'm guessing?
Well, it could be.
Nah, can you... Well, maybe it doesn't... Either one you're going to treat the same way. If I prune the dogwood back hard, it's not going to hurt the plant. You know, this is the yellow twig version right here.
Yeah.
Let's see if you got a picture of it here.
Okay.
Yeah, that's red twig dogwood.
Okay.
So it would be just like this. I could
Okay.
look at the base of it,
But it's got huge.
and you can pick some big pieces out of there. I've got 2 of those
okay.
in my yard, and I've taken some massive pieces out of them.
Okay.
I grow mine. I have 2. One of them like that, I let for the bird, so I let it do its thing. The one in my landscape, I'd shear back a little bit because
Okay.
the youngest wood is always going to be the brightest. So I usually go out in June and kind of chop it off at a certain bud, then I get a little shorter growth, and that's the bright red that I want for the next winter. Does that make sense?
Wait till
But that
June.
one there, wait till the tail end of winter. You could really cut that back hard. You're not going to lose the twig dogwood.
Okay.
So getting into the middle and getting some of that old stuff out is going to be the way to go.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
she asked about willow.
Yeah.
What about willows? I mean, no matter when you prune them, they go.
Yeah, willow's going to grow fast. Again, I mentioned somebody asked me about one curly willow yesterday. Make sure you get a spray on your willow. Those get blight up here pretty easy.
The hummingbirds love it.
And the wheat spring, yeah.
So I hate to.
Yeah. Again, it wouldn't be a rush to me to do now, but kind of towards that tail end of winter,
Okay.
I'm going to get in there, thin it out. Is the weeping willow tree, or is it the shrub?
Topiary.
Oh, it's the white, pink, green one.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's the perfect candidate to shear into the structure you want because then I get all the colorful leaves and off we go. Yep.
I'll ask the vine question.
Vine question.
My clematis
Yes.
and my achillea.
You say clematis, I say clematis, right?
Yeah,
Clematis. Yeah.
You really say
Spelled the
clematis?
same.
Clematis, clematis. I hear it's all kinds of names for that.
Right.
Do you know which one you have? Not sure.
Not.
Okay.
It might be like president or maybe purple
Big purple one.
flowers.
The clematis is tough to tell you one blanket rule because in the clematis world we really have 3 types. So we either bloom on only old wood, we bloom on new wood, or we bloom on both woods. I would say the safest thing for you is on a trellis, an arbor, or something like that. You know, typically you want to cut older clematis back to about 3 feet of old wood. You'll still see buds in there. It shoots off from there, and I still have old wood to give me a little flower. And then all the new growth should bloom again like mid-late summer. Okay.
Some of it is so
Oh, that's kind of vine how they.
entwined
Yeah.
and I don't know whether I should try to separate it. And
Well, I wouldn't worry about because I mean that's what vine's going to do. You're going to have a big, thick, twiggy mess at the bottom of any vine, not just those, but all of
Yeah.
them. But cutting it off at a certain height will probably manage the size a little bit more. The Akebia is going to be a little different creature because that one we have one of those out on the road here. That thing gets pruned 3 times a year. It would probably be across the street because those grow fast. So Akebia is mostly evergreen. It blooms right coming out of winter. So if it was my vine, I'm not doing a lot to that particular one in the winter time because I want to enjoy the flowers. That's the reason I have it. So right when it's done blooming, you could do whatever you want to Akebia. It's going to grow fast. We cut that in like half most years, and it's twice the size as it was again when the last time we pruned it already.
you know, it's kind of up over a trellis, and I want
Trellis.
to
Yeah.
stay up over the trellis.
Yeah,
but
so
it's-
don't, you know, you got a piece coming out of whack or prune that out, but that's the problem with vine. When I have vines, I want it to cover something, so I'm not interested in starting it over every year. You just got to where I waited 5 years for you to get to. So lightly pruning them. The Akebia, unless you wanted to start it over, which you could, you're probably not going to do as much. The clematis, I probably would try to get once a year. Really going to maximize your flower. If you guys, everybody else got clematis. I mean, that's the difference in clematis is old wood gives me bloom in May, June. The new growth gives me the flowering in the August, September time frame. So clematis you can get long season of color out of with the right ones.
It's a May bloom.
Yeah, if it's May, and you don't get rebloom on it.
If I deadhead it, yeah.
You
it
do a
might
little bit,
get
so you
few.
probably got the same group then. The hardest clematis, which I'll be honest, for us, I buy most of the plants here, we avoid only old wood bloom because your hands are tied. You know, I can't really do anything. If I prune it, I get no flower, you're just tied. So maybe a couple here and there, and those are typically your collector clematis, you know, the Duchess of Edinburgh's and the big doubles and this and that. Most of the vast majority we're going to have in blooms either on new wood only or both types of wood, so you got some flexibility, yeah, for the pruning. But again, specific to your question, I would not be going out here in a month, in a week, whatever it is. I'll be walking and out there probably that first part of March, and that's when I'm zipping off my clematis to off we go for the next spring.
No.
Yeah, yep. Yes?
I bought a house, has an apple tree. It hadn't been pruned in at least 5 years, maybe
Okay.
more.
Okay.
A lot of water sprouts,
Yep.
a lot of crossing branches.
Okay.
That third rule probably won't work for me.
Well, fruit trees you can get away with a little more than a third, for sure.
Should
Yeah.
I be really going after the
I-
crossing branches and the moss and light?
You know, again, I would encourage you because I'm going to be bringing in some branches and I'll have pictures up on my screens when we do fruit in January. But just to get you going right now, the two things I would worry about, no matter what you do, it's going to grow. So I don't care how far you cut it back, it's going to grow. The problem with apple, do you know what spur looks like? So look up your fancy phone or whatever you got and go, show me an apple spur and picture that in your brain. That is the only thing that's ever going to bloom or give you fruit. So the problem with the spur fruits, apples and pears, the other one, is if I cut back hard every year, you don't have any one-year-old wood, you don't have any spurs the second year, and then you got no fruit. The reason I want apple, I want to eat it. I mean, when we get down to the basics, I want to eat the thing. I'm not growing an apple because I think it's aesthetically beautiful in my front yard. It's a nice, cool tree, but I want to eat it. So you got to get used to what the spurs look like. The water sprouts, and that's not just apple, it's almost all the fruit's a big part of that discussion. It's always going to happen. I don't have an answer for you to make that not happen. That's the plant. But what you've got to get in the habit of, you know, if I had a branch and I pruned it last year, I got 7 of them that grew 6 feet, right? Because this is what apple does, or pear, or all of it. So I can't look at that and go, okay, I'm just going to cut you off every year. It's never going to change. And I don't have any wood to start building structure to get more spurs, right? So I look at that clump, you're out of here, all the way to the trunk. No stubs, you're going to have more mess. I get those off, I leave the one that's going the direction I want, or this direction that I want, right? Then I take those and I cut them back, and I'm just going to leave like 3 or 4 bud sections to an outside bud so that I can get spurs and I start my production process. Does that make sense? If I go in and do this spring and fall every year, I'm not building any kind of structure for the long term. At some point, you're going to have nothing. No fruit at all, no bloom. It's just like, oh, it's got leaves, it's there, but I don't have any production on it at all. So if I thin the crossing branches, get them out of there now, no problem at all. Rubbing, oversized, out of whack, all that, I don't care. But when you get to the final phase, okay, now I got to get you down to a manageable size. Just don't shave everything off and try to leave those key 1-year-old pieces so I can start to build the structure. I'm not trying to do this with fruit. I'm trying to do this. I don't want to get a 20-foot ladder and climb to get my damn apple. I want to get a step stool and grab whatever I need and I'm good to go. And that's why no leader, there's no leader on an apple. We're not worried about that. We want that growth to come out and go horizontal for the most part and not up. Okay? Yeah.
Same thing in apple, but it's a espalier.
Yep.
Okay.
I want tiny, you can look at our espaliers. I'll prune that one again in January at the class. We'll be doing that in the class. We have 2 pairs here.
Until January.
But yeah, this is, again, the fruit is not a November, December thing to me. This is like a Valentine's Day, you know, late January, February time. We've gotten through the winter. Again, for your apple, if you had scab, you had mildew, all that stuff, peach leaf curl if you had a peach, you had whatever it is, that's, again, out of there. Don't leave the leaves. Don't leave the rotten fruit. You're going to get your maggots back. You're going to get all that stuff back again. Get that out of there, and then do your structure pruning when you can see it's fine. But when we get to that tidying up stage, the prune for production again, that's going to be that late winter.
We wait to do the cop in January.
Same thing. If I'm going to spray my fruit trees, which I would absolutely spray every fruit tree, especially in our neck of the woods this side of the mountains, that's exactly prune, clean it up, spray when you're done. Let it bloom. We never spray anything in bloom. You got no bees, you got no fruit. Simple as that. So we get something natural like that that's not systemic, because we don't want to eat chemical. So we use these two products, liquid cop hort oil, bugs, disease. We walk out there after pruning, we apply the shield. Now we're good for a month. We watch what the weather does. We let it bloom. Maybe the leaves come out. Okay, now I get the copper on again. And I get on that once-a-month schedule, you're going to have nothing to worry about. You do it once in December, you forget about it, and you come down here next June. Why do I have scab? Why do I get? It's because we didn't monitor it through the wet season. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but it's probably going to rain the majority of the spring, right? It always does up here. So that's the time to me. If I can get myself protected for that wet spring, once you dry out, you're golden for the summer up here. It's just that March, April, sometimes May, hopefully not June, right? We don't wait till the 4th of July for summer every year. I love the Dodgers hat, by the way, too. Nothing makes me happier to see the Yankees lose.
Yes.
Nicely done.
Yes.
All right, so don't forget, I got staff out if you got more questions. I'm going to clean up my mess in here.
Are you gonna prune the
Oh, yeah, you guys want to watch?
Yeah.
Let's just
Prune the tree.
We're on a 2-hour class today. You guys got patience. Let's try to get him up in the middle here. So I think this is a great example of, excuse me. So if I look at that coral bark, right? I bring this in every year, this or something with twig color, because you can see the wood a little better. But if I'm looking at this, I'm not trying to sound all hippie on you, but typically I'm like in my yard, like walking around and just kind of like, okay, what are you telling me to do here?
Yeah.
I want to do this, I need that, it looks out of whack. I kind of get a plan. I've watched guys walk around for an hour. I don't think that's quite necessary, but usually the tree will kind of let you know, like, hey, I could work on this and make this better. I think this is a great example of options for 2 reasons. One is, do I want a single trunk tree, or do I like multi-stem? So speaking for me, I intentionally buy some Japanese maples in here that got pruned low young, so that I have more than one trunk. They make beautiful landscape specimens. Think of your vine maple, like your native vine maple. All the other plants we have in the yard, I can buy that tree as a single trunk, I can buy it as a multi-stem.
When is it too late to chop that off to make it a multi-trunk?
Well, if it's already up, it's too late. I mean, if you want to buy one that started like that, buy a younger one.
2 years?
Probably a couple years. I mean, if I had a single trunk coral bark that's already up 6-8 feet and I chop the trunk off, don't do that. Yeah, don't do that. So this is one here. We're going to keep it as multi-stem because that's how I bought it. But I wanted to just point this out because if I get onto the bottom here, right, I could easily grab my little fancy pocket saw. I'm going to have a tough time getting loppers in there. But I could literally get in here and saw all of these little low branches off to the trunk and get rid of all this and turn it back into a single one. Okay, can everyone see that? So that's option 1, is I'm like, you know what? I got shrub, I got perennial, I don't need this lower branch. I could thin these out, you know, get it out away from the garden a little bit. That's easy as well. But I've got some choices here is the whole point of it. So if I'm gonna start this, I'm not gonna change the structure we have, but I'm gonna try to thin this out. This is a great example that this is not my problem. This mess is my problem in the middle, okay? So if I get into the middle here, I'm gonna start taking out pieces right back to the trunk, you know, as best I can and not leave little stubs. That one's gonna be a tough one. There we go. And I can open this thing up from the base and get some more air. So I could dig in here. I'm taking most of the young twigs out.
Pretty skinny ones you're taking there.
Well, we're gonna get into some bigger ones here in a second. Hey, this thing, don't do this to your trees either. This should have been taken off there's no reason this tree, they stake it up to get you a nice leader, but you can see what's happening is this thing's just going to end up growing.
Crooked.
Yeah, it's just going to end up growing into that bamboo stake at some point, which already is trying to. Boy, he loved his, we call these the tapener. Some grower loved his tapener. It's like, oh, I'll treat that like a vine. We'll put one on every 6 inches, right? So now I think we can get that.
Got one more down there, so you got it.
I should have got that out before that. Hey, let's just do this for,
Yeah, I was gonna say just a shot.
for easy sakes. That might be a little, see, there's one of my little pocket pruner is going to come in handy.
Do you have that one here?
This is my favorite tool for the prune.
Yeah.
Can they be sharpened?
Yes, they can. They don't work. The saw blades are not going to work nearly as well with that sharpener I showed you. But that's why for me, I use this all the time. This is like it probably cost you like 15, 20 bucks.
You get new
So I
ones.
get every 3, 4, 5 years, like, all right, you're done. I'll go grab a new one. Yeah. You can take it to a knife shop or a sharpening, they get it for you too. There, now I can see. So I'm gonna dig in here at the bottom and try to get a lot of this stuff cleaned out of the center. Maybe that one should go too. Then I can work my way up. See how this is kind of layered upon itself? I mean, I can get in here and start taking, this is rubbing. I'm getting you
Which
out of
one do
here.
you choose? The one that's rubbing.
Well, can
or
you
the
see that is
rubbing?
like, I want the outside, this healthy wood to keep my shade going. We had another branch laying on top of that one on the
Okay.
inside.
You can see on where it's
So
rubbing.
you want the healthier, maybe
Yeah.
bigger one?
And again,
to stay?
the natural process of this tree is all this stuff that I'm taking out of the center here, this is all going to turn beige or brown here and within a year or two anyway and die on its own. Doesn't mean it's diseased, but it's going to be in total shade in old growth mode. So it's going to thin itself out. So if I waited another year, I would probably put my glove on and I'll be taking this stuff out.
That's what this stuff over
Exactly.
here is?
Yeah, we'll get this last because I wanted to show you that because it's got a little black on it, which is not the best color. So I'm going to dig in. We got little leaves blocking my way. You can see somebody made a bad cut here, left a stub, so there's where we're getting our multiple sprouts. Most of the growers don't take the time to do. This is the kind of stuff I wanted to show you. So can you see the front of that tree? This is what we have when we got problems.
Yes.
So somebody came in here 3, 4 years ago and just took a piece out. Now I've got dead wood. It's turned black, which is never a good color, and that has to go. So I'm going to try to get that piece as best I can out of there. And that color, whenever I see black on maple, this would send the red flag up to me. Some point this winter, I'm getting my copper on this tree. Yeah, I'm going to make sure that doesn't continue. If I get black into the trunk, I'm going to lose the tree. You're going to get pseudomonas.
We have dogwood that had an old cut on it, and it rotted, and I don't know if it's gotten into the trunk or not.
Well, as long as you don't see it on the color, I would never, just because I saw black, you're not going to go get the blowtorch and, remove the tree that day. I'm going to get that piece out of there and I'm going to keep an eye on it. And if I see that more dying back or get to the main trunk, the tree's got to go. And I'm going to sterilize my pruners before I go touch another one.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Not related to this. Do you have any of those little sharpeners left in here because they're out?
Oh, we got a whole bunch. I just got 100 of them in.
So just ask them again.
Yeah, she's got more of them. We got a whole box of them.
Oh, they did. Okay.
So the piece of dead wood that you just pruned, is it okay just to break it off if it's that big?
It could be. Well, that one's probably big to snap it out. But most of the time, the beigey color wood like this just snaps right out.
Sometimes I just pop off those bigger ones.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, you don't need the dead stubs in there. That's just a better area or a bigger chance that I might end up getting something wrong.
Yeah.
So the base of this thing is looking much better already.
That's why I'm here today. I'm so afraid of doing it wrong.
Oh, you can't. But again, see, the biggest difference is that, like, I don't want to ruin this tree, but here, if I'm going to prune this, again, my choice is I could take this all the way off of the trunk. I'm not going to do this, is the problem. If I cut that, then we're going to have like 4 people have said, yeah, and then I got 50 sprouts came out of it next year. I got to take it off again. So if you're gonna thin something out, thin it back to the main branch. You can see 50 places I've already taken something back. I'm not gonna leave stubs, you know, where that's gonna cause me problems. I'm gonna get black, like that one we just had, a chance of disease, or I'm gonna have a pruning nightmare here in another year or two, okay? That is looking much better at the bottom.
It just feels murderous.
Oh, you're helping it.
Yeah,
A new lease on life.
It's gonna be a happy tree.
Murder would be, let me fire up my chainsaw on the stick and cut it off at 4 feet. Now you got a butchered tree.
My husband panics.
Yeah, that's
And
what
I'm like, nope, cut it.
Yeah.
Just panic.
Well, again, it
grows.
you know, I'm not trying to turn into pruning geeks today, but I mean, again, if I look at the plant, it's like if you recognize where the buds are, you see the growth pattern of it. You know, if I just take a minute, no matter what it is, you know, here, you know, there's 3 branches. I'm like, okay, I don't know, man. I don't need 2 going the same direction. So I could take one out, you know, give it a little bit more room. Maybe this one's out of whack. I'm not gonna ever just do that. I'm gonna go, okay, let's slow you down and cut there. I've got the same direction. The tree's gonna grow the same way as it did before, but I just bought myself another year. Does that make sense? Yeah. So this one's gotta go. He's been bugging me since I brought him in here. Yeah, especially when they're young. I mean, what I found with a lot of customers, they buy trees here. You know, like fruit's a great example. You come down here and buy a fruit tree in January when you bear root, you know, we will prune it for you. And some people stand back like, dude, what'd you just do to my tree? And like, trust me, this is what needs to happen. Because otherwise you take it home, let it grow for 4 years, and you come back here and go, well, why do I have a 12-foot tall, 3-foot wide fruit tree? It's doing nothing. We got to get it cut back. We probably cut 50% of the wood back, outside buds, and start that shape that I'm talking about for you. So let somebody show you, because I'm telling you, if you do it when they're young, 3, 4, 5, 10 years go by, you're going to have a huge amount of work less to do. I mean, it really does make a huge difference. You know, by doing this now, this is a pretty heavy prune, you know, because it needed to be done. Like I said, I would have done this last June. When I saw it, I was like, ooh, I got to get that thing fixed. You know what? I'm going to see if I save that here and have it for the pruning class. But you know, I might have to go back to this next year and go, okay, you got a whole bunch of new growth and get it tidied up one last time. But see, that's what I'm looking to get rid of. See that beige wood? I'm even starting to see a little dark on there. That would worry me if I left those on there. And that's not, I don't want you to think it's a Japanese maple problem or it's always disease. It tends to be a coral bark problem, to be honest with you. It's just this one variety tends to be a little bit more susceptible to getting some of that dieback.
I guess another benefit of this is you get all that new growth next year, and it's going to be beautiful red.
Exactly. Yeah, the youngest wood, you can see the base of this is already turning. It's going to be the brightest, and then 3 years later it starts to go gray. We have a lot of people call with little coral barks they got. Like, I got this tree 5 years ago. It's always been so bright. Now I'm just got a great trunk. I'm like, well, that's what you have. The shell is what always gives you the interest every year. Yeah, as it grows a little bit older. So I think that's just gonna go.
I know. I'm like,
I would have gone.
Expand that out.
you should have a class where you actually give people the pruning.
Yeah.
You know, we tried. The best thing ever, I'll tell you, not to tell you not to come to classes here, but a couple times a year, if you watch, we usually advertise it through us because we're friends of the Arboretum, but I volunteer a lot. I'm on the board of directors down at Legion Park.
Yeah, that's
So,
such a cool
so
walk.
like 2 times a year, I will do a live pruning demonstration. And I'm telling you, for people that come down and want to spend a couple hours and we work on some things together, you could look at a tree that's in your yard that's 15, 20 feet tall and go, okay, now I see what you mean. This is about as good as I can do at the nursery. We just don't have quite that big. But can you see the difference at the base?
Wow, yeah.
I mean, and look this right here. I'm going to take this one too.
Plant Amnesty does.
Yeah, Plant Amnesty does great ones.
Yeah, hands-on pruning classes.
And those, again, if you volunteer down at the Arboretum, if you're ever down there volunteering, I think it's like first Wednesday I'm always down there helping, and then I think it's third Saturday. No, just right here in Everett. Yeah, Legion Park. You know, everybody works on everything. It's like, hey, I'm here to help today, but I'm not comfortable with that. Can you kind of give me some pointers? And we all work on stuff together. It's not like you go, here's some pruners, go prune whatever you want. That would never happen. Yeah, but it's so you want to.
First best day to
That's called Evergreen Arboretum and Gardens.
Yeah. So if you're there helping out,
Yeah.
and you're weeding those little pieces that go into the pathways,
Yeah.
you put them in a little bag and bring them home.
Sure. We won't. So don't ask, don't tell.
Yeah.
Now, is that your OCD that's making you take those leaves out? Or
Yeah,
would that
it
be mulch?
is. It is. No.
At
it-
home, can I leave them?
Oh yeah.
For mulch?
No problem at all. Like I said, I am always working on disease. I hate spraying, and I want to keep it to a minimum. So there's very few plants in my yard that I'm going to walk around and say everything is out of here. I mentioned quite a few of them already. If I had roses, lilac is one I worry a little bit. I mean, there's a few, but it's not the end of the world. Maples, this is usually the best fall color in my yard for one, and for two, the cleanest. So this is what I gather off my OCD lawn and tuck in my beds to protect soil for the wintertime.
Good. That's what I was
And get it out there in the spring.
Exactly. Spring typically I just pitchfork it, turn the whole thing over,
Get rid of the slug eggs.
add my lime. Well, that brings up a great example because you'll see, I don't know if you guys read my thing I send out every week, and it's in the paper, I think. At some point here in the next few weeks, we'll go back to the OCD winter practices, and we'll talk about slugs and cleaning up perennials.
Good, yeah.
Is it, do you have to do it all? No. Are there some things I would do? Yes. But everybody's going to have different tolerances. But slugs are a big thing with me, and you know as well as me, there's certain plants they tend to gravitate towards, and other things they don't. So if you looked at my yard in the winter, probably 10 years ago, it was like shot back, like, okay, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm trying to keep the birds happy, everybody happy. But there's going to be big areas where there is no debris because I don't want the slug to leave eggs, around my hosta, my coreopsis, coneflower, I mean, I go on and on. There's things that I'll leave, there's other things that'll get cut back. The rest of it will always get done coming out of winter. So.
Somebody gave me Cass Turnbull's book on pruning a long time
Yep.
ago.
Oh yeah. Well, I hate to tell you, I'm getting old. I'm 54 here, but it's probably 35 years ago I went to classes with her. I mean, she's been around forever and still
Who's
teaches
that?
them.
No
so.
more.
No, Cass
more.
does.
She died.
Yeah, she died. Yeah. But
Lynette.
I don't know I don't know if you know how she passed away, but it couldn't have been a better way to go. I think she was in Hawaii, wasn't she? Yeah, I was just like way too young. But
Her book was very
but she started this whole craze going back years ago. I mean, her slideshows were fabulous. I'll probably bring some slides down one of these years. Like, this is what you don't do.
Yes.
This is what you do.
Yeah, her
And there
book
was
was
pictures of like
Her book
some
was
they tunneled shade trees where
good.
power
That's
lines
like
literally went
Turnbull.
through shade trees. Somebody cored out like the whole tunnel. I mean, it's just it's like really who's it's
She
just
gave a fun class.
exactly.
Long
Yeah.
time ago.
So and again, every
Turnbull, like Turnbull.
Cast Turnbull.
B-U-L-L.
Yeah. So it's called Plant Amnesty. They still do great work.
they do.
Yeah. We donate. I think Cisco did Amnesty Bingo a month ago or so. We were down, and we donate quite a bit to them. There's a total nonprofit. We give them stuff every year as well. So. But yeah, you'll see. I mean, I could do. Can you tell the difference at the base? I had this in my yard. Now to me, I've got the energy into what I want it next year, and I'm going to develop into a really nice multi-stem specimen with that down the road. This could have been vine maple, Japanese maple, a big old smoke tree, but it could have been anything where you're just kind of choosing what you want. Again, it's not going to look right because it's going to look pruned, but I mean, I literally could have taken my saw and picture in your mind if I chopped off every single one of those to the main trunk, now I'd be back to my tree. And if that's where I wanted to go too. So if I'm going to buy this, I'm not going to go buy a single one because I think you're going to either choose multi-stem or single when you purchase it, but I could do either one.